I'd like to call the subcommittee meeting for safety, traffic, and for policy manual subcommittee. Today is October 3rd, 2023, and the time is 6:19. And I'd like to establish a quorum. Mr. Homer?
Here.
Mrs. Rivas-Mendez?
Here.
And the chair, Joyce Asak, is present. So we do have a quorum. I'd also like to read, in addition to attending, the public can view this meeting via television on Comcast Channel 8 and 1071 HD version and online via www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. So the first item on our agenda is going to be our policy. Oh, we actually have Mrs. Donna Migdale here present with us going over our policy manual. She's worked on this, so she's going to walk us through this. So the first item we have is policy BEDC, and that policy reads, let me just grab it, there we go. So this policy is about quorum. So if any of the members have any questions on it, this one I can read it quickly. It discusses the school committee is an 8-member committee, and that quorum would be 5, and the 8th member is our mayor. The subcommittees of the school committee are no more than 4 members, and that would be a quorum for that subcommittee meeting is 3, no more than 4. And then committee of the whole is 7 members, so that is the subcommittee of a whole, which our vice chair chairs those, and our quorum for those is 4. So if any of the members have any questions on that, if not, I would be looking for a motion to approve the proposed policy BEDC quorum.
Motion to approve BEDC quorum.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Cynthia Rivas-Mendez, and it was properly seconded by Jared Homer. All in favor, show of hands, and that's unanimous. Our third item is policy section G, personnel. So we do have a lot of policies on here. We do have a chart that goes over, so Mrs. McDale, these are all, is this chart available online, or is it just the policies? Okay, so the chart that we have shows what was updated by mask, recommendations by our attorney, recommendations to omit parts of some of these policies, recommendations to add, and then we have recommendations to send to HR, and then we have another recommendation with legal edits, and that would be Sarah Spatafor, our attorney that's been working on this, along with mask. So I can read through the policies. Are there any policies that anyone would like to pull out of order to review them? I know I wanted to remove the criminal offender record information, the QORI. That's policy G's and boy, B's and G as in girl, B as in boy, E's and elephant, A's and apple, A's and apple. And that one, I'd like to remove that for further discussion with HR. I know they've been working on that with our attorney. So if that's okay to remove, I'm going to just remove that for further discussion, GBEAA. And that's what the query.
I'd recommend holding for discussion, for further discussion, GB, which is staff, personnel, security and safety, GBGE, which is domestic violence leave policy.
Actually, which one is that, Mr. Homer?
GB, which is staff, personnel, security and safety.
So GBGB. Okay,
Yep.
Those are in the blue?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So just for the people that don't have the color coded chart, I was just going to read out the.
So those ones in blue, you'd like to, those 3?
I would hold those for discussion. Yeah, GBGB, GBGE, and GBGF.
And for the record, GBGB is staff, personnel, security, and safety. GBGE is domestic violence leave policy. GBGF is Family and Medical Leave Act. So those, Mr. Homer has requested to put those on hold so we can get further information from HR on those.
I think, we want to confirm that HR has received the proposed changes and that things are in place for us to approve that. I would hold those for discussion. There's a few more as well that have also been.
We might as well add those, Mr. Homer.
Yeah, that's GBJC, which is Teachers Personnel File. There is GCBB, which is Employment of Principals. GCBC, which is Professional Staff Supplementary Pay Plans. GCIA, which is Philosophy of Staff Development. And the last one is GDQC, which is Retirement of Support Staff Members. Those policies, we want to make updates to those. We also want to just refer those to HR just for additional feedback, I think. So I would just hold off on those ones for now. and
Okay, so
concentrate on those.
Mr. Homer made a recommendation to hold 7 of the policies that he referenced. Can I get a motion to hold those policies as stated, Mr. Homer?
Yeah, in the
They
form
were
of a
8,
motion.
right?
Oh,
There are
sorry.
eight- yeah,
1,
there
2,
are
3,
eight
4,
items, I
5,
think.
6, 7. Okay, so I'm missing one.
7 on the first page and there's 1 on the second
Oh,
page.
okay, perfect.
Okay, so I would just make a motion to hold off on any vote on those until we get some feedback from HR.
Okay, can I get a second on that?
Second.
So motion's been made by Mr. Homer and properly seconded by Mrs. Rivas Mendez. Yep, if we can get a vote on that. Do you want us to vote individually on the items that we're holding and items that we're moving forward? Okay, show of hand, unanimous. Thank you. Can you just put the microphone? Thank you.
Possibly have somebody from HR come to the next manual subcommittee and fill you in on these particular policies.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions on any of the other policies, or I can go through them by line item and we can approve them to move forward to the committee as a whole? Because right now they're in policy manual, and then it's going to go to the committee as a whole to review these policies for final vote. Mr. Homer?
So there's one more policy that we see a few recommended edits, which is the section number is GBECA, and the title is Internet Acceptable Use Policy. There are some recommendations for changes, and when reading the notes of recommendations, I think it references, the references from legal are in reference to a pop-up on a certain screen on website. I don't see recommended changes to the actual text of it, so I wanted to recommend that we possibly consider that. So that's the employee responsible use section. And there's a recommendation that when a guest signs onto a network, that there's a pop-up with a responsible use agreement that should be consistent with this policy. So I think that sounds like that's a question for us to consider with IT or with communications about what actually appears on the screen, and if it's really a policy issue or a more technology issue, or just sending the file as approved to the technology department to add as a pop-up. So I just wanted to get clarification on that before we make a change, make sure that we have what we need in order and that that's ready to be posted if the language is posted. If that's all they need is for us to approve the language and then they post it, but I just wasn't clear on what that edit was, so.
No, definitely.
I'd recommend holding on that until we get the answer to that question as well.
Okay, so did you want to make a motion to hold Internet Acceptable Use Policy, GBECA, for further discussion?
I do. I make a motion so stated.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Homer to hold GBECA, policy GBECA, for further discussion with either our IT department. And all in favor? Unanimous to hold that item. So just before we go a little further, some of us, so these policies were reviewed by the last committee. I know Mrs. Rivas Mendez and myself were not on there. Mr. Hoover, were you on that committee? No, so you have 3 brand-new members that are on this subcommittee. And so we're going through the policies. We do have some questions, rather than just vote them through. We just wanted some clarification. So for those that are watching and wondering why we're putting so many on hold, it's because we just wanted clarification on some of the policies before they go to the committee as a whole, to see if there's any questions that any of the members have. So the next, I'm going to just flip through quickly because I know I had pulled some stuff out of order, but I believe mine, actually, GBED. So the GBED, I'm not sure how the members feel on this, but, you know, I'm looking at this and it's September of 2016, and it's tobacco use on school property by staff members prohibited. So, I mean, it talks about electronic cigarettes, electronic cigars, but, you know, we vape. I mean, are you comfortable leaving it, electronic cigarettes, cigars? Should we, I mean, it does say rely on vaporization. Is there any wording in there that anyone would recommend, or are you okay with that wording? You're okay with it? Okay. Mrs. Rivas Mendez, you're okay with that? Okay, we're fine with that. So, and then, let's see. I believe that was it. I mean, my questions, I was able to get, look into. So, any of the members have any other questions? And otherwise, I can go through this packet of these policies.
No, I think we could take a look at what we want to
Okay.
bring to the.
So, so I'm going to go through the mask updated policies. So I'm going to go through them. They're going to be a little out of order. We can do them in order. We have our sheets. Which would you recommend? Which is the committee's desire to move forward with this? I can go one by one, and we can vote on them as a group. We have quite a few policies. I can do all the green in first, and I can do all the salmon. Or we can just stay in order to make it easier for the minutes.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with going in order, I think if we address the mask updates and the recommendations to omit and just go through the title
Okay.
labeling and the label of the name of the specific policy, I think that would be sufficient for us. I think I would be comfortable with that.
Okay, you're fine? Okay. So, policy GA, personnel policies and goals, that was updated by mask. So that is, the next one is equal employment opportunity, GBA. There were some recommendations to omit some of the wording in there by our legal department. Actually, the omitting is by the legal department. Sexual harassment, staff, GBAA, that was also, had some recommendations by the attorneys to remove some of the wording. Employee confirmation of receipt, GBAA-E. School committee staff communications, GBD. So those so far had recommendations for some changes by our attorneys, and they should be in a final form right now. Staff ethics, conflicts of interest, that was updated by mask, GBEA. And then the next one we're holding, so the policy after that would be staff conduct, staff conduct, policy GBEB, that was updated by mask. Gifts to and solicitations by staff, GBEBC, that was also updated by mask. And recommended online fundraising and solicitations, GBEBD, that had recommendations to add some language in there. Drug-free workplace, GBEC, mask updated that with their policies. Sorry. Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988, that had some recommendations to omit some of the wording by our attorneys. We held the next one, so GBECA was held. The next policy is tobacco use on school property by staff members. GBED, that was updated by mask. And then GBGB, GBGE, GBGF, GBI, those are being held right now. Actually, no, GBGF is being held. The next item is staff participation in political activities, GBI. So that's mask policy missing from BPS policies. So mask must have added, recommended to add that into our policies. Personnel records, GBJ, that was updated by mask. The next policy is being held. The policy after that is staff complaints and grievances, GBK. That had recommendations from our attorneys and from mask. The next two professional staff positions, GCA, and professional staff salary schedules, GCBA, those were updated by mask as well. And that reflects most recent versions. The next two policies, GCBB, GCBC, those are being held for further information. And then the next items, we have family and medical leave, GCCC, family and medical leave again, GCCC-E, and then certified staff vacations and holidays, GCD. Those all had recommendations from the attorneys as far as wording, so those have all been updated. Professional staff recruiting and posting of vacancies, GCE, mask updated that. Certified staff recruiting, GCE-E, that had some changes by our legal department. Professional staff hiring, GCF, and then substitute professional staff employment, GCG. Those have been updated by mask. And then GCIA is being held. And the next item is professional development goals, GCIAA. That had some changes from our legal department. Yeah, to omit. Okay. Okay, so we're omitting those. Okay, so those ones we're omitting. Okay. Professional teacher status, GCJ, and professional staff assignment and transfers, GCK. Those have been updated by mask. Nurse staff assignment, certified staff time schedules, GCKC, and GCL. Those have been omitted. Evaluation of professional staff, GCO, that's been updated by mask. Recruitment, interviewing, and appointment promotional positions, GCP, that has been omitted. Resignation of professional staff members, GCQD. Retirement of professional staff members, GCQE, that has been updated by mask. Suspension and dismissal of certified staff members, GCQF, that has been omitted. Tutoring for pay, GCRD, that had recommendations for, that was recommended to make some additions to that. It says added, recommend to add. Support staff positions, GDA, that was updated by mask. And the following, we have support staff contracts and compensation plans, GDB. Support staff and family medical leave, GDCC. Support staff vacations and holidays, GDD. Support staff recruiting, posting of vacancies, GDE. Civil service qualifications and requirements, GDEA. Civil service staff probations, GDI. Those were all recommended to omit by legal. Evaluation of support staff, GDO. That was updated by mask. Support staff promotions, GDP. That was recommended to omit by legal. Suspension and dismissal of certified staff members, GDQD, and that was, it says mask policy. So, okay, so that was recommended to omit that one. And that's it for policies for G.
For G.
Any members have any questions?
I would
Are
make two recommendations, if I might. It might be prudent just to take a look at the two that we've added. The reason being that in our last published policies, we didn't have language for GBI, which was the staff participation in political activities. That was a policy that was presented by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, taking the language from that and recommended to add that to our policies. So that was one that we were recommended to add.
Which policy was that, Mr. Homer?
GBI,
GBI, one
staff
second.
participation in political activities.
Okay.
So just clarifying that, just for the public, that's a recommendation coming from legal, that we add language that Massachusetts Association of School Committees has in their recommended policies. And the second one was also tutoring for pay, which was also not in our last published policy manual. So that one, again, specifically the language, the definitions, and the proposed policy are coming from MASC, and it's referencing Mass General Law 268A, which is the Mass Ethics Commission FAQs for public school teachers. So the language that we are proposing to discuss is coming from legal, and it's just to replace gaps that we had in our budget, just for clarification. And then the only other thing I would recommend too is the items that we considered omitting. Again, it's not omitting a policy. It's just that under legal guidance is indicating that some of these policies are referenced in different sections of our existing policy. They're duplications and it's redundancies, and that's what we're proposing to take a look at when you hear us say omit or motion or recommended to omit. It's recommending changes to the policy manual to avoid redundancies.
Thank you. So any other questions on those policies? Any statements? Can I get a motion to approve the policies as stated?
Yeah,
Those that we're holding, those that we're moving forward with?
I would make a motion to approve the policies that we've just read, separate from the ones that we've held, to approve those in section G of the policy manual.
Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. So a motion's been made by Mr. Homer and properly seconded by Mrs. Rivas Mendez. Can I just get a show of hands? All in favor? Unanimous. So the next packet, and I apologize, we're trying to rush through this. The next packet we have is item number 4 would be policy section H, negotiations. So for negotiations, we have, so negotiation goals, which would be policy HA, negotiation, legal status, HB, school committee negotiating agents, which would be HF. Any of the members have any questions on those 3 policies?
No questions. Those are, again, those are mask policies, and these are HA negotiation goals. There are recommending no changes to the policy, the current existing policy that we have. And then HB and HF, negotiation, legal status and school committee negotiation agents, is just updating to the most current language that is in proposed mask policy.
Thank you.
I make a motion to accept the proposed changes or no changes to section H.
So we have a motion to accept the 3 items for section H, HA, HB, HF. Can I get a second?
Second.
So a motion's been made by Mr. Homer and properly seconded by Mrs. Rivas Mendez to accept those 3 policies. All in favor? Show of hands. Unanimous. Thank you. So under item number 5 would be other business. Do we have any other business? I know we if we could maybe pencil in another policy manual date, just so we can get another meeting, just so, because it's a sizable packet of a lot of policies that we're going through. So if we can take a look at our schedules and try to do it on a Tuesday before one of our other meetings, maybe sometime in October. If that works with the committee, I'll go ahead and schedule that. And then that way we can have HR come in and go over some of the policy questions that we had on some of the items that we put on hold
Yeah, I
for
think we have
further
October
information.
Yeah, right. I think we have October 17th as our next one.
Yeah, we just need to double check
just-
and see
yeah.
what else is going to be.
I'll
Usually 6 o'clock works out good.
Right.
Just so we can see what else is going to be added on.
Yep, I'll hold that. I'll reserve that time.
Okay, and I'll put the 17th on hold as well. And if I can just get one more member, then we'll confirm with the office. So anything under other business? Anything else? Any members want to We're good?
No, I was just going to mention, like you said, just to make sure at the next policy meeting, we invite somebody from HR and perhaps somebody from legal, just to clarify the proposed changes, and then we be all set. We can review those 8 items and then address the next items.
Yep, there's a couple of items that we need clarification on. I think one was IT and the other one was HR. So I will reach out to them and invite them to our meeting. Maybe the IT one, they can probably just answer that for us.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
But HR, I know we have a couple of questions on some of those. So if that's all for this evening, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Can I get a
Seconded.
second? So a motion's been made by Mrs. Rivas Mendez, properly seconded. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you.
I hereby call the Brockton School Committee for Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023, it being 7 o'clock. We are here in the George M. Romm Little Theater at Brockton High School, 470 Forest Ave, Brockton, Mass. 02301. I would like to read the following to the record. Dear visitors, welcome to the meeting of the Brockton School Committee. This is the agenda that will be discussed this evening. Please note that hearing of visitors is included. If you have a statement or question, please give your name to the secretary. We have had hearing of visitors signed in. In addition to attending, the public can view this meeting via television on Comcast Channel 8 and also on the 1071 HD version, and also online via the following link, which is www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. I will now ask us to please stand and salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now establish a quorum. Mrs. Sullivan? Mr. Homer?
Here.
Vice Chair?
Here.
Mrs. Rivas Mendez?
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez? Here. Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan? Here. Chair is here as well. We have established a quorum. Hearing of visitors, again, we will have the countdown clock, and Attorney Sarah Spotterford will be the timekeeper. We've had quite a few people sign in, and remember, again, you have maximum speaking time of 3 minutes. The first person is Mimi, and I'm sorry, I can't read it. I think it says Desir. Mimi, good evening.
My name is Mimi Desir, and I was born in Haiti, and I migrated in this country in 1985. At the age of 5, I was introduced to art in a very strange way. Let's say life wasn't fair. We all know that. And at the age of 9, I was allowed, or it was given the authorization for me to use art. Otherwise, my mind would have collapsed and we would not have been able to talk today. So in 2010, I was in the earthquake of Haiti, but I ended up to be in Massachusetts. And once more, art will come to my rescue, meaning that at that moment, I knew I went to accounting school, but I could not do it because my mind had a problem. I just faced tragedy, and there is no medication really for us to get out of it. So I chose art again. And the next thing I know, I call myself, by practice, a visual artist. I call myself an art instructor. And as I embrace that new road because of art, I have to remember my teenage year. My friends used to call me the tourist because I didn't attend to school, but I always passed, whether it was the school exam or the country exam. So here I am today because I really believe art is medicine, but it's not addictive. Put the right way, I would say, We implement that in science. We implement that in mathematics, which giving the children the opportunity to plan for a business. We use that in thinking, meaning that whether the children knows how to draw, paint, they use whatever they paint to give a story. Meaning at that moment we emphasize on communication and positivity. There is no game about it, what I'm saying. I have been working with many, many places, people with multiple addiction, people with autism, Down syndrome, intellectually challenged, the elderlies, whatever you can think of. That's a potent medicine. And if at any time we want to rescue the mind of our
Excuse
children
me,
right
your time
now,
is up.
Thank you very much. The next person is Clay Mackenzie Bowen, please.
Hey, how's it going, guys? So my name's Clay McKenzie. I'm a Brockton resident. I grew up here. I've been here for 15 years. I went to Brockton High and all that kind of stuff. I'm a comic book artist. I'm a published author. I have 3 issues created so far. It's a sci-fi comic about an inventor named Adam Riff trying to find his daughter in space. You can purchase these either in person, or I have my own website called riffanime.com. And I will be attending my first Comic-Con on October 14th. So, thank you. I'm going to be an art teacher with Dr. Brickhouse's, Mr. Brickhouse, sorry, his art program, the CAT program. I think that kind of stuff is really important for kids because it's a good outlet, because these kids, they're high schoolers, they're going through puberty and stuff like that. It's a very stressful time in their life. I know that when I was a teenager, I was a mess. So this kind of stuff is really therapeutic for them, and that kind of stuff really matters for kids in this developmental age. And I'm not going to use all my time. That's all I had to say. Thanks, guys.
Sonia Dixon, please.
Hello, hello, hello. The empire's standing up. I'm the last one. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Sonia Dixon, and I have a postgraduate clinical program in relational and multicultural treatment in Simmons from 2012. I have a master's degree from Simmons School of Social Work in Boston, Mass. I graduated in 2007. Obtained a bachelor's degree in service management from University of Boston, Mass. My granddaughter, who have been in Brockton public school system, and both of them were stabbed here. I'm not in here specifically, but they went and they met another friend, and then they went over to my daughter's house. We treat them with love and respect. And then all of a sudden they came back to the house, you know, and they had knives. They cut my oldest granddaughter right here almost and had paralyzed her. And then my other one who graduated got stabbed on the side of her leg. So this is really interesting and really very important to me and important to the other kids that go here. I also attend the New Fellowship Christian Ministries. I'm on the Women's Commission here in Brockton. And I also want to say that I grew up in the lower part of Roxbury. What got me into doing this is I've been in domestic violence, family service involvement, mental health, intellectual disabilities. I am excited and honored to have a chance about joining the Brockton Public Schools. I've been working I've worked in Boston Public Schools for over 15 years. I was IEP director, and I also know how to direct and come together all the teachers for special needs and going over their program. I've been excited and honored to have a chance about joining Brockton Public High School. I've been working full-time 25 plus years, hands-on experience in a combination of education, training, and management, social services, community involvement, and cultural diversity, and organization involvement in mass. I'm looking forward to do the same thing in Brockton. And the CAP program is a program that assesses life in and out of school. Woo woo! That's all. Thank you for listening.
Mr. George Brickhouse, please.
My name is George Brickhouse. I'm before you once again in reference to a program called CAT, Critical Analytical Thinking. It's something that the Tuesday before the dam broke, Mike Thomas and I had a scheduled meeting at the high school at 3 p.m. to sign a contract to get the program into the 10th grade. And Mike was going to show me the classroom that I was going to be operating in with the program and my team, which includes Mimi, Clay, and Dr. Dixon. That's part of the CAT program. That's part of what we would have in the classroom at one time. And besides, as Mimi said, the program encompasses art, music, history, real history. It includes finance, and it includes the learning of games, because games are what life is all about. You have to learn how to manipulate in life and focus life, because life changes on a day-by-day basis. And the games of chess, backgammon, and checkers and Soku allow you to do this in a classroom structure. Now, I'm here before you today in the spirit of God and in truth. So that's what I'm bringing first and foremost. To talk about my program, there's not enough time. But the fact that the mayor and I have talked about the program, and when the mayor first saw the program, he said, can we get this into every middle school as soon as possible? He will validate that. Dr. Spalding and I talked about the program. In fact, that in terms of the middle schools, it would be excellent because the program was designed originally for 5th and 10th graders. Renee Haywood and I talked about the program. In fact, she helped me refocus the program in a better way to read it. Principal Burns and I talked about the program being in the school system. As my time is winding down, I just want to ask, really, Dr. Cobbs and Troy Clarkson, can you help a brother out? Can you just help a brother out by giving me a meeting with the two of you next week to talk about the reality of bringing something into the school system that has been looked at, and every member of this board has also received information on the program. So it's nothing new. It's something that can make a difference given the opportunity, and if we can get it in place before the start of the next term, I think that we would make a big difference in the community of Brockton, and we would be letting go of some of the aspect of the colonizing politics of Brockton.
Excuse me, your time is up.
Thank you.
Angela Burke, please.
Good evening. I speak to you tonight on behalf of a group of parents who admire and support the music program here in Brockton. While we understand that so many of the unique, enriching experiences our scholars are afforded here are dependent on funding, we also know that funding is prioritized based on what is best for kids. Therefore, we ask you to please keep the music program at the top of the list when you consider what the opportunities are that scholars need to be the well-rounded global citizens we strive to develop here in Brockton. Although not every scholar in Brockton will be a part of the music program to the same degree, we can confidently say that all scholars benefit from the music program. Whether it's because they play an instrument or attend a concert, music is the language by which all of our scholars can communicate. Unfortunately, there was no transparency in the recent decision to eliminate instruments at the 4th grade. Therefore, we are unable to speak directly to the catalyst that got us here, but we can speak to the impact it will have on our music program overall. To anyone in this room who's ever attended a concert or seen the marching band at a sporting event, you are already aware of the extraordinary talent of our scholars, thanks to the time and energy our staff pour into them. We are extremely concerned about the overall impact this will have over time on our robust music program. And while we may not be in a position to overturn the current decision, we come to you today to beg you not to let this become a pattern of making any additional cuts to our instrument program. Our scholars can only be as good as the investment we make in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen Lacey, please.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. I'm here to speak to you as a very concerned parent of an 11th grader and a recent 2023 BHS graduate. I was saddened by the news that Brockton Public Schools would be no longer offering instrumental music lessons for our 4th graders, and that lessons will be taken out of the school day curriculum for our 5th graders. I want to say that taking music lessons, making music lessons first thing in the morning before the school day starts is not equitable for all, and I know for a fact that not one music educator was involved in this decision, in this decision-making process. You'll be losing out on some great musicians by doing this. The music department would have found a way to make that part of the school day curriculum and not take away from the core curriculum. I'm going to talk to you about, on a more personal note. I can remember the day when my son came home from Hancock School and he said, I want to play the saxophone. He said that music teachers came in and demonstrated all the musical instruments and that the high school students played them, and he said the one instrument that he loved was the saxophone. So I said, okay, let's do it. So we signed him up for saxophone lessons, and from that moment on, that was his first love. The Hancock Elementary School educator taught him how to read music and make that saxophone play wonderful sounds. At a young age, he was learning the skills that would carry him throughout his life. He learned patience, the importance of teamwork, and persistence to achieve his goals. He continued playing in middle school, where he was introduced to other musicians, and slowly he formed his music family. He found a group of young people who had the same interests as he did. They had each other's back and pulled each other up when they needed it. Throughout his high school years, his music skills increased. He was part of every band that Brockton High had to offer, and he was able to hone in on his leadership skills throughout his 4 years. He looked up to his music educators as role models. He took it all in, and early in his senior year, he decided that he wanted to make music education a career to pursue. Today, he is a freshman at the University of Massachusetts of Amherst studying music education. He wants to one day teach and give back to the community that gave him this great opportunity that started in the 4th grade.
Excuse me, your time is up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Linda Pizzi, please.
Hi, thank you for having me again. As I said, I'm here again in hopes to keep music lessons in the school day and not before school where students, for many reasons, can't be there. Dr. Cobb, your school committee members, if you would please take some time, reach out to the music department and discuss and go over a schedule and options that can be put together that shows it can work to keep music lessons during the school day. To many students, it's a therapy. To some, it's a career path, hoping to pursue music ed. If you took the time and spoke to some of the students, you would hear the anticipation of getting to the high school because of the band. If band wasn't an option, a lot of these students would have chosen Southeastern, Norfolk, Aggie, Spelman, a school choice community, or a charter school, or any other option they would have. A lot of these students wouldn't be here. Students consider music classes their shop class, just as someone who wants to be a mechanic would consider auto shop theirs. A recent graduate sent Mr. Cardell a note thanking him for everything he learned while he was at the Brockton music classes and music theory. He is attending UMass as music ed and said he is far beyond his classmates because of his classes here in Brockton. With all the negativity in the news for Brockton, our students are constantly being praised. Recently, from a Lincoln Sudbury parent, praising the band and the visitors, saying how proud we should be of them, not just for the music ability, but also respect and self-discipline. They also sent a video that was posted. Please consider putting music classes back during the school hours from elementary grades and above. I'm sure that something should be able to be worked out. I just hate to see it end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Abdil Snelling, please.
Good evening. I am a sophomore at BHS who also happens to be in the band. Like many others, I started in elementary school, 5th grade for me, others 4th grade, but yeah. I saw the instruments when they were playing them all, showing them in the room, wanting to get kids into the wonderful program that happens at this high school alone. I started at the George School playing the drum, and I went on to 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and to now. When I reached this high school, I became interested in playing in the marching band, which has been sometimes called the joy of the city of Brockton, or its pride, or any other synonym you want to figure out. And my question to you guys is, if this marching band is the so-called pride of the city, why are you trying to, let's say, cut off or limit what would lead kids into this wonderful program? Through this band program, I have met like multiple people, some of my lifelong friends that I would never met if it wasn't for this band program, and I've had many experiences. Also, like the woman before me said, this marching band and band program had been praised also outside of the city of Brockton. Like last year, it was the same thing about how they liked the energy, the music, and the personality of the entire marching band we had. And once again, it's happened this year when we were at the, I forgot what it's called, our last football game that we went to. And yeah, I just really wonder why you want to cut off what leads people into what people consider the pride of the city, as the marching band goes to parades, football games, to play important events, and things like that. And that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Maggie Penny, please.
Good evening. Hi. Hi, everyone. Some of you are my neighbors. Some of you are my colleagues. Some of you have collaborated with me. Some of you have inspired me. And with the leadership that we've had, it's pretty bittersweet for me because Today, October 3rd, 2023, marks the 2 years since the last time I came here and spoke in front of you as my fellow citizens and residents and colleagues and leaders. I have my oldest who graduated, thank God, in 2022. I have my last daughter, who's my most vulnerable child, who is a senior here. She has had to incorporate some of the real-time, real-life, lingering issues that this school district has been facing in her college essays, so that they could understand what her special situation is being a student here in her 4th year, which began during the pandemic. I'm happy to say that she's been accepted to 2 universities so far, but I'm unhappy that 2 years and 363 days later, or 1 year or 363 days later, the song remains the same. We're still dealing with safety issues. We're still dealing with bad culture and climate. There are things that I know, I wish I could tell you, that I know that has happened in between these walls. But I can't say this for confidentiality and student privacy issues, but I know. So much so many tears have I shed, so many prayers have I made, that I have decided to do more. And I'm looking for you all to do more with me, if at all possible. I'm imploring, I am pleading, I am begging with you to please, let's take back Brockton High School, please. I will be sending out some other educational district level materials, as I am very involved and invested with DESE, Parents Advisory Councils, as well as the school council here at the school. So I hope that you receive that information well. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Krim, please. Laura.
Good evening. I'm here as a parent of a Brockton High School senior and a community member. I'm here with some of my fellow band booster members. I'm here to get back to the music issue. The school and the city are very proud of our music program, so much so that it's featured in your promotional video, telling everybody why it's so great to come here. And I'm really proud of the band too, but I'm concerned that the decisions that are being made about the music program and the instrument lessons are sort of the beginning of what might be a systemic dismantleization of the music program. Because first we lost 4th grade lessons, and now 5th grade lessons, we only get 5th grade, and they've been pushed to the morning. Not all people can get there in the morning. It's really hard for families, so that's really not equitable. This is where the kids learn foundations of music. They start to appreciate music. They meet friends. They move into middle school already with a solid foundation. So now we're looking at going into middle school, and we're going to start doing music lessons, and kids are going to be learning how to play scales. We're not going to have that wonderful band that we're all so used to and we love if we don't start educating our music students early. This doesn't happen overnight. Our bands have won awards. They've gone to festivals and competitions, and they've won awards. It doesn't happen starting day one, 9th grade. It doesn't happen if you start in middle school. You have to start early, and it takes a lot of work. I'm concerned about that. The music program is, I think other people have said this, it's a reason why some kids choose to come here. It's why some kids chose to stay here. When my daughter was a sophomore and we were doing all that stuff with all a lot of safety stuff and the evacuations and all that, friends and family said, maybe it's time to look for another school for your daughter. And she said, no, I don't want to leave band. Band is what, and band is what got her here and why she stays here. These are her people. And like the student before me said, you don't get there without starting early, because kids aren't going to start in middle school. I'm already hearing that maybe not as many are doing the 5th grade lessons, digressing from my speech. So I'm concerned that we're going to continue to lose students if we don't continue to have a robust band program. we're all concerned that we've lost students in this community and our enrollment is down, and I'm worried that we're going to lose more if we don't have a robust band program to offer them. And you don't have a robust band program without starting early. And I've been surprised in the last couple of years traveling around with the marching band at how many schools in this area don't have marching bands. They don't have big concert bands. We see them in competition. They're not as great as we are. We're pretty amazing. But we get there because we start early, we work hard, we've got a lot of dedicated students, and we've got a music department that is poised and ready to teach music and music lessons in school. And I'm asking that we allow them to do that so we can continue to have an amazing band program. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary LaSavita, please.
Good evening. Mary LaSavita, mother of a junior at BHS and a 20-year resident of Brockton. And I want to speak to everyone, the school committee, parents, caregivers, and even students, definitely teachers, about the power of participation. This morning, as it was very cool, and my son was in the car in his hoodie, I thought to myself, and I told him, I said, you're wearing that hoodie today and those sweats because of the power of participation, because there was a proposal for uniforms that almost every parent, the community at large, spoke out against, made some practical suggestions. We defeated the policy. So thank your parents, thank everybody around you for participating so that you could have that and stay warm on this day. I've handed these out, and if anybody still needs one, let me know. The Parent Advisory Council is starting up in 2 weeks before the next school committee meeting on October 17th. So this is a little bit about that, where you go, where you enter, all that good stuff. We will have snacks from Brockton Beer Company. No beer, though. But my co-chair, Magali Pinney, and I are really trying to get this group up. For example, this morning I drive my son to school at 7:10 and there's 100 kids standing outside Azure House waiting to get into the metal detectors. And every other day he tells me, he's like, Mom, there's nobody there, they don't have enough staff. So one of the things, among the many things we're trying to accomplish with the PAC this year, is we're trying to start a volunteer group here at the high school. Clearly, we understand there are Corey checks. We've been talking to administration about those kinds of things. But we'll worry about those details, trying to get it going. We need volunteers for things like the metal detectors, but also any teacher that is listening to this, if you have ideas, I'm going to try to reach out to as many teachers as I can here at the high school. But if you have any ideas of anything that a volunteer, somebody with not a lot of knowledge, could do and take off your plate, we can get these volunteers in here to do those things so that the teachers can focus on things like discipline and teaching. So definitely, if you can't make these meetings, they're going to be basically going forward on the same schedule as the school committee here on out. But we have our emails on here, we have our Facebook group. Reach out to us, even if you can't make the meetings, and find some way to participate. Volunteer, please. Because Maggie and I and the PAC really want to be part of the solution here, as we're hearing all these problems and cuts and things like that. The school committee can't accomplish
Sorry,
it
your
alone.
time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Kim Langford, please.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to talk about some things that I've researched and bring to light something that I feel like is being overlooked by the Brockton Public Schools. So one thing I want to first discuss is the fact that we have a total of 9 people on what is called the Information Technology Board in the city of Brockton. And one person who I don't know at this moment from the school committee is actually on that board. And in my research, I have found that we continuously upload PDFs to the Brockton website, PDFs of all different kinds. And in my personal experience, PDFs are just junk. Nobody is going to read a PDF, no matter what language it is. I mean, it's pages upon pages upon pages of information. And don't get me wrong, it's great stuff. It's fabulous information. You're doing your job. But people in this day and industry, especially when we know for a fact that many people who are families not only are juggling a family, but have multiple jobs, just don't have time for that. So what is a solution? My solution is we need an interactive dashboard. We need to invent and simplify. We need to be bar raisers here in the city of Brockton. So I've already started in a matter of 2 weeks developing a dashboard while working a full-time job. You have 9 people on your IT board, and they have not done that. You do have an app that is available on Apple, I'm assuming on Google as well, but it does not have anything to do with Brockton Public Schools. So I am challenging you and your IT board to, by the end of the year, develop a interactive dashboard on a website and also made available for both the Apple and Google stores for all families, students, and parents, so they can see what they are asking you for, so they can see the data. You have the data, but you're not making it accessible. And they should have the ability to toggle back and forth for the languages that they need. I mean, again, you have 9 people. Utilize them. Utilize them to the best that they need. So just to throw out some data here, right? So per the Census Tract 5110, you have 1 school located in that area.
Excuse me, your time is up.
Oh, sorry. We'll get to that next time.
We want to thank everybody that spoke tonight for hearing of visitors, and again, we will continue to ask anybody that wants to come to please come at future dates as well. And again, we want to also want to thank IT for doing the countdown. That's something new, so thank you very much for that. I think that's really conducive, so appreciate that. We'll go on to agenda item 3, which is the report of Superintendent of Schools, Acting Superintendent of Schools, Dr. James Cobb. Doctor.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, school committee members. We have a rather brief agenda tonight. We'll just want to go over a couple of things in the teaching and learning department. Troy Clarkson will speak a little bit later about what we're doing as far as the position control, but I just wanted to give people an update on that we have completed the new position control form, that it's actually in use. Troy and I signed off this afternoon on a few positions, and we'll keep that process moving forward. So we have a lot of positions still to fill, and we will be working with those and getting those out pretty quickly now. Any questions on that, on the position control? Okay.
Any questions for the doctor on that? Vice Chair, please.
I think it's more of a clarification, and I know that we've talked about this before, but I just want to clarify. There are a lot of people thinking that we have a hiring freeze.
We do not have a hiring freeze.
Okay,
We just had to reorganize ourselves and do a little bit better job at, funding positions, making sure they're funded, and then making sure that they're needed. Again, working with the cabinet members before we actually just sign off and get them posted to and advertised to fill. We do not have a hiring freeze. We have a lot of positions that need to be filled.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification, Dr. Cobbs.
You're welcome. So the next item on the agenda is just an update quickly on where we are with the position of hiring the principal of the Brockton High School. So the cabinet members, we finished working on the job description. We've vetted it actually, and again, Troy and I signed off on that particular position today. So that job out will go out this week. It will be out, out on the street to start collecting resumes and people interested in the position. The cabinet is also, with the help of Dr. Labaloy, I think you did a great job on putting together a whole interview process and rubrics that we're going to use to interview and call resumes. So those we plan to start interviewing or reviewing resumes the 23rd, week of the 23rd of October through the 27th. Again, our goal is to have a finalist in position for January 1st at the latest, which, as we discussed earlier, will give us time to go through the process, choose the candidates, the finalists, and then give that person, whoever it is, time to give notice to whoever they're working at the time, because obviously we want to be professional about it and have them give at least 60 to 30 days notice wherever they're working at the time. So that's kind of the quick update on the superintendent's report of schools. Any questions on the position for the Brockton High School principal? Thank you. Next will be Troy Clarkson.
So we, just for point of information, we don't have the student representative report this evening, but again, we will have the student representative at the next meeting. It's on the agenda, but I just want to let you know the student representative is not here tonight. That's correct, right, Dr. Cobbs? Okay, thank you. CFO Clarkson. Good evening, Troy.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the committee. Oh, thank you. I did prepare just a very brief PowerPoint. Here are copies for you and members of the public. It's really just to reiterate some of the things that we've talked about over the last several weeks, but to try to give you just a little bit more detail. We did introduce, and I'll talk about that in a minute, the last time I stood here before you, we had what I called a rudimentary reporting and budget tracking tool. We continue to work to improve that, and last week was able to finalize, I think, a much more advanced and detailed budget tracking tool. In the interest of paper, I did not make copies for everyone because the 3 different reports, to make copies for everyone would be hundreds of pages. But as I committed to doing, I expect if it's not already up on the website, it will be up on the website tomorrow, so every member of the public can access this, this tool. So the current state of the collaboration between the schools and the city, I've spoken several times about the school-city finance team meeting regularly. Although that seems like a mundane occurrence, I cannot overstate its importance and its values. We met again today for a couple of hours. Dr. Cobbs and his team, myself, and the folks from City Hall, including the budget director and the auditor and a couple of finance analysts, and we actually problem solve. We talked through today something as simple as how does the revolving fund for the culinary arts program access food for their students? Sounds like a very simple question, but given the financial controls that we've put in place, our overarching priority is making sure that the instructors and the support staff in our schools have the tools that they need to do their jobs. But we have to balance that with a level of oversight that allows us to read these reports and make sure that we're spending within our means. So we spent probably 30 or 45 minutes, but came up with a plan that will allow that CTE program to access the tools that it needs to teach our students. And so it's important that I restate that that's our overall objective. Yes, my job is to oversee the finances and make sure we finish the year with sufficient funds in place. But I understand that that is in pursuit of the excellence that everyone has come to expect here in the Brockton Public Schools, and that'll continue to be our focus. So we have developed that integrated approach. Dr. Cobb's mentioned, and I'll speak in more detail in a couple of minutes, about filling positions. And so I'll explain to you the process that we went through to sign that form to fill the critical position of the principal here at Brockton High. But that's the result of a process that's taken, yes, a couple of weeks to put in place, but we now have confidence that when Dr. Cobbs meets with his cabinet and they come up with a position that needs to be filled, we have a way to be able to create some accountability and demonstrate that there are funds available, but then also document that process so that if anyone in this room or anyone watching at home wants to know how we came up with that decision, there'll be documents that support that. As we move forward, I think, and this is outside any of the audits that may or may not be performed, but I think now that we're starting to wrap our arms around where we're at financially, I think one of the things that I would suggest we start to talk about is long-term, what does the organization look like, and how do we best utilize the talents of everyone in the organization to support both the city and the school operations. So this is just one small piece of that, that overall series of budget documents. And so as you can see, this was as of 9/29, which is a few days ago. And as of 9/29, we should be just about at 25% spent for the year. And as you can see, separating out net and non-net school spending, and I'll address that in a minute as well, but we're slightly under where we're supposed to be. So that gives us a good snapshot that about a quarter of the way through the year, we're spending within our means. The non-net is a little higher than we would like it, but that's why we have this tool in place, so that we can monitor that spending and adjust funding if we need to. An important fact, and I've said this the last couple of times I've been up here, in order to maintain the integrity of these reports, they are a direct reflection of what's in Munis. So we don't try to interpret or adjust any of the figures. This is a representation exactly of what's in our accounting software. And that's important in this instance for a reason. You can see the non-net number is a little over $15 million. That's what the school department requested, but what the city council actually funded is a little over $11 million. So Dr. Cobb's team and my team are working on ways that we can reflect that. What we didn't want to do is just change that to $11 million, because we want to make sure that these reports are, again, a direct reflection of Munis and don't represent any changes or adjustments made by any member of the staff. That way, the documents maintain their integrity and their credibility. But we need to recognize that some of those figures at some point need to be adjusted. So we're refining this document on a daily basis. Sarah Butler from Dr. Cobb's team and Evan Lacasse from my team continue to work together every day for quite a long time to try to refine those. So this is an overall snapshot, but as you know, the reports come in a series of documents. We have what we call the pay code summary. So this is a report that just has organizational codes from the accounting software. So that's sort of your 30,000-foot high-level reports. We've also developed a report that gives us categories that are not individual schools: adult learning center, art, athletics, attendance, bilingual. And so we separate it by those categories. And then we also have a report by each school that allows us to see how the spending is occurring in each of our schools. And we will make this report available to the school committee and the public every 2 weeks. And the reason for every 2 weeks is because most of the employees are paid every 2 weeks. So if we produced it every week, it wouldn't really be a discernible difference week to week, and we want it to be meaningful for you. here's why that level of detail is important. Dr. Cobbs came to me this afternoon with a form, the form that we created, the position control form to fill the Brockton High principal. Because we have a level of detail where I can instantly go take a look at where we're at, all I had to do was turn in the page in the report that says Brockton High School. And our accounting software classifies the expenses within Brockton High in many different ways. And overall, Brockton High is at 20.4% of its spending here in Brockton High. And as of 9/29, that was 24.86% of the year. So the high school is a little below, and then when you go to the line in the high school budget for principals and assistants, they're also slightly below. So I was able to sign that form with a high degree of confidence that there were money to support that expense for the rest of the fiscal year. And that's why this level of detail is not only important, but it's helpful, because again, my job is to make sure that our educators and our administrators have the tools that they need to do their jobs, but within the confines of the budget that you've set as the school committee. So with this level of detail, I can do that with confidence, and that's why it's so important. Again, we'll make this report available to the school committee every couple of weeks, to the city council, and also to any member of the public that wishes to access it. In addition to that simple budget oversight, as I mentioned, and as Dr. Cobb mentioned, the position control has that dual review, so that not only is any position that gets filled consistent with the mission and educationally sound, but we can ensure that it's financially feasible. I talked about the munis override access, but I wanted to revisit that. That's something we're still working through, but we have significantly limited the amount of people in the schools that can override that budget in munis and just overspend in appropriation. The actual budget for the schools that's voted by the school committee is only in 4 different categories, and so those are the limits.
Can I ask you a question? When you said that you limited the positions of people with access to munis, did you actually document that? Do we have names of the individuals
That have the override?
that they had the override?
That
you
had
limit-
it previously
Yes.
or have it now?
Yes.
I don't have that, but we can certainly, Munis possesses that information, so. it
Okay,
was-
so that's documented.
Oh, absolutely.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Now, the only people that have override capacity in Munis are the city auditor, and I think that's it. We limit it on the seats. Not even I have override access, because I don't need it. And anyone, when you go in and override, the software documents that as well. But that was one of the challenges. That because that ability to override was so widely dispersed, because the categories of the budget was so broad, the school committee doesn't vote a budget with these lines, right? You don't vote a budget in that detail. This is, though, meant to guide the spending and to make sure that the spending is going in the places where you intend it to. So it's really important to stay within those lines, because that captures the spirit of the budget that you passed. I mentioned the streamlined purchase process. Again, that may seem sort of a mundane, routine thing, but we're putting systems in place so that there's accountability and documentation when someone goes through that process. We also meet frequently to outside of our regular meetings to try to understand spending in revolving funds and grant funds, and so there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done. But we've, I think, made significant progress in the last couple of months in really creating some accountability. So you noticed in the beginning of the PowerPoint presentation was the city seal of the great city of Brockton, and at the end here is the logo for the Brockton Public Schools, and that was intentional on my part to demonstrate that indeed we are all in this together. Dr. Cobbs and his team, and my team, under the leadership of the mayor, are truly working together as a team to try to move us forward in a way that, as I said the very first time I stood up here, is accountable and transparent and restores public confidence in the work that we do. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. I'll start with the vice chair, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. I'd like to go back to the current state of the fiscal '24 budget, if possible. And this may sound like an ignorant question, but I just can't seem to get past the fact that we budgeted $15 million for non-net school spending, but we only actually received $11 million. So how does that happen? And the reason I say this is we're already coming out of the gate with a deficit, and so why would we not go back and revise the budget? Or can you explain that process and,
Sure.
and how does that even happen?
Well, it happened because the budget that was presented to the city council, so this body voted a non-net budget of $15 million. The budget that was voted by the city council was, for non-net, was an amount of $11 million. And so that was a function of the available funds at the time. And when I discussed that with the city council, I told them that we were underfunding the request that was made by the school committee. It was out of necessity because of the limit of the availability of funds to do that, and that our intent, and when I say our, on the city side, the mayor, me, and then the city council, our intent was to monitor spending throughout the year and then to supplement the budget if those additional funds were needed. So I do anticipate sometime this year we may need to make an adjustment and increase the funding for non-net. Now, that was during the budget hearings in June, before we were aware of the significant deficit. So as we proceed in addressing the deficit, we will have to understand that we may have to make some adjustments in the non-net as we go through the year and how those funds are expended.
Which I completely understand, but what I'm still confused by is if the city council votes on less than we budget, and this might be a legal question that I have to take offline, but how is that communicated back to us to say, okay, you didn't get what you actually asked for, so therefore you are, $3 million under what you were budgeted, and so that we can then rebudget with $3 million less.
So that's an excellent question. So the meetings, obviously the votes of the city council are taken in public at public meetings. I can tell you that I certainly conveyed those votes and those numbers to the superintendent and the school CFO. If those numbers were not conveyed here to the school committee, I can pledge to you, as I have, that moving forward, the level of communication will be such as though you won't be caught by surprise by anything. But it does present a challenge in meeting our non-net costs this year. As you can see, the trends are that there's already spending beyond our projected if the budget was $15 million, but that includes some purchases, some capital purchases that have skewed those numbers a little bit. So my preference is to see, after another month or 6 weeks, that percentage should actually come down as the year progresses, because those large purchases at the beginning of the year will be less of a burden on the whole budget.
What if we never get the $3 million?
Well, there are always funding opportunities, transfers from other places, and I fully understand and appreciate the difference between net and non-net spending. But that's why we'll make these reports, so that together we can monitor the spending and make adjustments and make additional appropriations from the city if we need to.
And this is not pointed at you at all, Mr. Clarkson. It's just for me to understand. But I'm feeling like after what we've been through for the past 6 weeks, to be starting out, and I feel as if I can speak for my colleagues in saying that it is our goal to ensure that fiscal year '24 is balanced and is clean at the end of this year. And it just concerns me that we're already starting out on on what looks and feels like a $3 million deficit that we're going to have to try to climb up hill and sand to overcome if there is no other revenue feeder that's going to plug that gap.
Well, I do know, in having some conversations with Dr. Cobbs during the last couple of months, that the understanding that we needed to have tighter control over generally of transportation spending, that there were some adjustments made to personnel at the beginning of the year that have reduced, I think, some of those budgetary pressures. If you'd like, we can have, at a future meeting, we can have an agenda item dedicated to transportation and look at all of those costs, what those cost pressures are. I mean, one of the reasons to have the level of detail that we have now is so that you can have meaningful discussions at the school committee in the light of day about topics just like this. I mean, that's the reason why we put so much effort into this reporting, not just so that you can look at them, but so that they're meaningful and we can have conversations and you can set policies about what your spending priorities are, because that's why we're all here. So I would welcome the opportunity to have that sort of discussion at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So we will do that, Mr. Clarkson. We'll put that on agenda dedicated to transportation, and we'll just go from A to Z on that one. So we'll work with Dr. Cobbs on that. Mr. Rodriguez, followed by Mrs. Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. This body voted for a budget that was approved, that was sent to the council, and it was shortchanged. I'm trying to understand it. So obviously, the budget that was presented wasn't what the committee approved.
For
So
the
who
for the net school spending, the school committee made a recommendation to the city council, and the city council appropriated the exact amount that the school committee recommended. For non-net spending, you are correct that the city council appropriated an amount that was less than what you requested. But in defense of the city council, they did so at my recommendation. The discussions that I had with the superintendent and with the school CFO at the time was that the net school spending was obviously the priority, to make sure that there were sufficient funds to run the school department. That the non-net, mostly the transportation costs, there was sufficient funds to do most of the work. And what the plan was to see how the spending trended throughout the year. And if additional funds were needed, then we would appropriate additional funds. So I want you to understand, it's not as though we were saying that funding of non-net or transportation was not as important, but that it was an area that we could fund a portion of it, see whether or not we could actually save some money, and understand whether or not 15 million was really the number, or could we effectively and efficiently fund transportation at a lower number.
So that recommendation was through you?
To the city council, yes.
To the city council.
But I will tell you, the mayor and I had meetings on a regular basis discussing the FY24 budget with the superintendent and with the school CFO. So this number was no surprise to them. It was something that we discussed.
I know, but there's an issue because this is the governing body of the school district. That should have been relayed to this body before it went to the council.
Well, so
this is the reason why we're in this mess.
Well, and as I said to the vice chair, that one of the reasons why I appear before you every week is so that we're having these discussions now. I can't speak to what discussions were had at the school committee prior to the passage of the budget, but we have an opportunity now to have meaningful discussions about issues like that.
So, I mean, I have a lot to say, but I think this body needs to relook at our budget. It really does, because it's not just 23, 22. We can go back to the 90s when Councilor Farwell sat in this seat. I'm not comfortable.
So
we were lied to. This whole body here was lied to, and we can't conduct business. I know we're trying to fix this, but seeing this now, it makes no sense.
Well, what I can tell you is that the process, not only here in Brockton, but in every municipality in the Commonwealth, is that school department makes a request for funding at a certain level, and then the legislative body, a town meeting in a town, or a city council in a city, then either approves or adjusts that amount. They generally don't have the authority to increase it, but they do have the authority to decrease it. And so I think the process, the proper process was followed. I certainly understand that you don't agree with the result, but we have an opportunity now to review that and discuss it and make adjustments if necessary. But
The reason why I'm upset is that there was a certain city councilor that pounded his chest yesterday that the city council approved all of our budgets, whatever we asked for. We didn't ask for 3 or 4 million short. So it doesn't make sense.
So I'm not here to have a discussion.
I know you're here trying to fix it, but I'm just saying.
Your
this
feelings
doesn't-
about the city council.
It's like I said, like every day it's something new. I don't even know what's going to come out of the hat tomorrow.
Well, in fairness to both the city council and to me.
There's no fairness to the city council.
In fairness to the city council and to me, the vote to pass the net and the non-net school spending were done at a public meeting. The budget is available since that vote was taken. The city won an award for the level of transparency of its budget. And so the amount that was appropriated to the school department for both net and non-net is not a surprise. It was the result of a very public process and documentation that's widely available. But again, I would suggest that what we focus on is maybe 15 million wasn't the right number. Maybe 11 million is not the right number. But our job collectively is to review that spending on a regular basis and to find out how much the school department needs, both in its net and its non-net spending, on a regular basis. And I suggest that's where we put our energies, because that's what we're here to do.
Thank you. So
I'd just like to add to that, when you look at these numbers and you see that it's 3%, that's less, it's not 25, it's 22, it's 23%. Understanding what that 2% means in actual dollars of a $219 million budget, you're talking $4 to $5 to $6 million. So, like Joy said, there may be some room for make adjustments as we go along for the non-net spending as well. So, we do not plan to finish the school year at 22% as opposed to 25. We will spend the money that's in the budget because we need to hire teachers, we need to buy supplies and goods.
I understand that. But just to clarify some things, thank you very much, Troy. Sitting on accounts review with the detailed information as the first presentation that you made to this body when you brought the documents, and that's why I asked, how did you pull this information? Because the accounts review requested this. I personally requested this. Mrs. Ellis, we all requested this, and we were told that it couldn't be done. And to have you come here and give us the documents that we requested is kind of damaging. It's embarrassing that, it's like being hidden from us. We asked for the breakdowns with the schools to show where we are. I voiced my concern on how our budget process is, where you only have the CFO/auditor, what his title is, but we don't have department heads coming before this body giving us their line items. It's done on the city side, the police chief, the fire chief. That's how this body should be conducting the budget, because we'll see that. If the documents that you provided to us, we would have seen that. So it goes to show you that I don't know what they were thinking, or what they were doing, or what they were trying to hide. So that's why we weren't given these documents, and that's concerning. But thank you for your presentation, and I know we'll be speaking off the record.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Ms. Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson, for your report. and all the help you've given us. I was just wondering, and maybe my other school committee members know, but I do not know who the finance team presently is. So if you could cue us into who the school finance team is.
Sure. Well, as you
If you
know.
have questions or anything, so we can get them answered during the day.
Yeah, what I can do is give you a contact list, both the people on the school and the city side. So we have, I'll start with the city side, a series of department heads who report through me to the mayor, the city auditor, the city assessor, the treasurer collector. They all have staffs. In my office, I have a budget director, 3 financial analysts, and an admin, all of whom play a role in the work of the office. On the school side, in addition to the positions of CFO and deputy CFO, there are several positions. They have an executive assistant who really is more like a member of the leadership team. Right now, Dr. Cobb's executive assistant is assisting on the finance side. There are 2 accountants that work for the schools. There are a couple of financial analysts. There are grant staff. There are people who are responsible for accounts payable, for payroll. So the staff is actually quite large. But we squeeze all of us into a room. And I said today at the meeting, someone was wondering whether or not a certain person could be invited to the meeting. And what I said is, this table's big enough for everyone. We need everyone in the room so that they're contributing and offering ideas and different ways of looking at things. So I'll get you all of you, an employee directory, so you know actually who we have. And just one more thing, we also have now working with us the folks from Open Architects, which is a consulting firm that's hired by DESE, and they have been here in Brockton, and they also work remotely, providing additional resources. 2 people, yes.
So if a school committee member had a question during the day, who could we, like, email or call?
You certainly can reach out and email or call me. Yeah, you know this, but you can email or call Dr. Cobbs. And if there's any specific specialized information, I'll immediately refer it to someone, either on my team or here at the schools that can answer it for you.
Very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Homer, please.
Mr. Clarkson, just going back one moment just to the net school spending, the non-net school spending, and the difference in what the request was made and what we actually received. Just in order to clarify for the public and people who might be watching too, money that was not given to us, what is that impact in terms of our obligation to meet minimum school spending per pupil in the city of Brockton, and just to make sure that we know that we're not.
That's an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up. Our obligation and the obligation for our minimum spending per pupil is always met here in Brockton. In fact, every year that I've been here and under the leadership of Mayor Sullivan, we have exceeded that required amount every year. The non-net spending is not counted towards that required spending. And so it's the net school spending that is reviewed and evaluated by DESE to meet our obligations. And another point related to that, there are other dollars, there's other spending that's incurred by the city that doesn't show up on the $219 million appropriation that actually counts towards our contributions to the schools. And you might have heard the term Schedule 19 before. At the end of every year, the schools come up with a compilation of all of those expenses. And so there's, this is just off the top of my head, but probably $25 or $30 million in healthcare costs for school employees are part of that overall contribution. But those expenses actually show up in the city's budget. So that's why we create a form at the end of the year. DESE evaluates it, and if we're not meeting that number, they send us a not nice letter to tell us to get our act together.
Thank you, that's helpful. And then just one additional question, I think, or a suggestion maybe. I think it might be helpful as we receive these updates to possibly review what we're incurring for costs for some of those big ticket items that we all know we saw overages in, especially with energy costs, fuel costs, and not, like, we'll see those things in transportation, I'm sure. But if there are big glaring things, if you could alert us to that in these reports, to maybe highlight or show us some comparisons from the previous year to this year, and show us where we're seeing overages and expenditures, things that I know we can't always plan for, we can't budget for, and know what we're going to incur for costs. But if you see those on these reports that you do put out to us, if you could flag those for us, that would be helpful. I think the public would want to see that too.
Absolutely, and that is precisely why, and again, I didn't make copies because it's a lot of paper, but I can in the future. There's 3 different reports. Again, one is by school, one is by net school spending categories. The other one is what we call a pay code summary. And if you can see this from a distance, some of these boxes are highlighted. And that means, the reason for that is the way this spreadsheet was built, this number up here is the amount as of September 29th, we should have been at 24.86%. If any of these numbers in any of these spending categories exceed 24.86%, it highlights that box so that any of us could immediately look at this and say, okay, I go to the last page and we're at 22.3, so that's below 24.86, that's good. However, let's look at electricity. And we see in electricity, we're at 31.18%. Well, that's more than 24.86. Gas, oil, and diesel is at 47. But the spreadsheet tells us even more, because there's a column here that shows us not only what we've expensed and paid this year, but what's been encumbered. So a part of the reason why the electricity and the energy costs are exceeding their allotment is because some of the staff have already encumbered money, which means they've laid claim to those dollars to pay future bills. So seeing the amount of encumbrances in electricity is $926,000, and gas and oil is $537,000. Although it's concerning that we're at 31.8%, when you take out that $926,000, we're well below that. So I look at these numbers, and maybe we get alarmed because we're over the limit, but then when you look at that, it puts it in perspective. And that's why this level of detail is so important, because these numbers really tell a story. And they allow us to have meaningful discussions like this about where we're at. And so we can have on any number of topics, at the accounts committee or at school committee meetings, we want to take a look at how are we doing in terms of energy. Because that, when we get into that level of detail, it's not very exciting to talk about electricity, but it gives an opportunity to then talk about, well, should we have solar panels in the parking lot at Brockton High? What would that mean for our energy bills? And so it allows you to have more in-depth policy discussions about our resources. And so that's just one more reason why this level of detail is so important.
Sure. And I apologize to my colleagues here too, just not having that document in front of us, and I know maybe some of the public watching would ask too, are there any items that are highlighted in yellow, anything that you would want to report to us now that you can see as overages that has nothing to do with encumbrances, things that we should keep our eye on now moving forward?
Yes. Janitorial supplies are at 94%, at 25% through the year. But there's $168,000 that's been encumbered. But that gives us an opportunity to go back and talk to our maintenance staff and what have you purchased, why have you purchased, those sorts of things. Temporary seasonal, we're over. I don't know the budget well enough yet to know what temporary seasonal is. But we budgeted for $196,000 and spent just over $200,000. Now let me be clear about something. So that 196,000 was for temporary seasonal employees, we've overspent it. But that's within a category that you voted, so you can overspend on lines like that because it doesn't exceed the appropriation, the overall appropriation that the school committee made. So, and that's an important distinction. So when I look at that, that's not a positive trend, but that's not, it's $13,038. But that's an allowable expense because the other lines that are well below that can compensate for that, so that your overall category of what the school committee appropriated is well within its limits. But again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but we're in a new era of transparency and engagement here, and these reports allow you to scrutinize, and when I say you, it's the big you, it's the public as well, allow us all to scrutinize the spending of the school department and raise those legitimate questions. So I will convey these reports to the school committee in the way that you think is best. I can email them as I did. I can provide hard copies with your agendas every couple of weeks. However, we're in a school, we know this, but we all absorb information and learn in different ways. And so I want to present the information to all of you in a way that, that is helpful to you.
Before I go to you, Vice Chair, Ms. Azak, followed by Mr. Sullivan, and then the Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. Actually, Mr. Homer touched base on one of the questions I had. Can we see, we do a lot of pre-buying, so I'm wondering if some of the janitorial is the pre-buying that we do, because a lot of those items are, they know we're going to use them, so they try to buy them in bulk to actually save us money. So I'd be curious to see, maybe that's why we're that high of a percentage. And then I appreciate your presentation, and it's a little frustrating. I know I'm just going to speak on behalf of myself, but I've talked to other committee members. Things that we had asked for, thank you for providing it, because it's making it easier for us to understand. You know, there's been a lot of surprises, and that was another surprise this evening that we were never made aware of. I know it was a public meeting, but again, you know, not you, but someone should have notified the school committee of the what was approved by the council. And again, as Vice Chair Ayler's mentioned, to keep an eye out there and just know that there is a shortfall, a little bit of a shortfall that we have to monitor. So, you know, I appreciate what you're doing, and I appreciate the help that you've you know, stepped in to help us out. So again, we're getting a lot of questions, but people don't understand. We've been asking. We have been asking for a lot of these reports before this committee even came on, before Mr. Rodriguez and some of the other members came on. We've been asking for years, and it took this for us to be able to start getting the information. So we're going to be able to better do serve as a school committee member with the information you're providing us. It's going to make it much more easier for us. But again, there's a lot of, I'm questioning a lot of stuff, and we're going through the motions. You have to second guess everything that's given to us nowadays. So I apologize if sometimes we come off a little harsh, but it's just, okay, there's another surprise. So, but I just want to say I personally appreciate the help that you have stepped in and to help the school committee.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Sullivan, followed by the Vice Chair, please.
Yes, Mr. Clarkson, I just wanted to thank you for the job you're doing. This is a second full-time job for you. But I had two questions on the munis. One is to clarify for people at home, what is munis? Is that a person or a machine or a computer program? What is that?
It is the accounting software most widely used, I believe. But it is the accounting software that manages all of our finances here in Brockton, on the city and the school side. So all of our revenues, every invoice, every employee, every personnel action, virtually everything that we do that's related to money in any way, this Munis software tracks it, maintains it, and then is the basis of how we calculate how we're doing, our budget. So every aspect of what we do is maintained in this software.
The other question, Mr. Clarkson, is you talked about the Munis override access. I don't need the names of the people, but how many people are there that had access to override something in the Munis?
I don't know the number, but I will absolutely, as I committed to Committeeman Rodriguez, it was significant. The ability to, if you needed to enter an invoice and it didn't show you had that much money in your budget line, you could click a button and override it. And so we have shut that down. I don't want to speculate on how many folks, because I could say it was 12 and it was 50. So, but Munis maintains that, and I will get that information for you.
Just to clarify a little bit, so somebody could actually go into Munis and override a budget item that we voted on here and spend more money than we had?
If they had those permissions, yes. But remember, there's a difference between the budget book that we've looked at that have all of those different spending categories, and the budget that you voted was 4 lines. It was personal services, teacher salaries, non-certified, ordinary maintenance, and there was one other line. So the actual, when you voted the budget, and I can go back and check the minutes, but I'm pretty sure it was those 4 categories. And so within those 4 categories that were voted at the school committee meeting, you can't move money from one of those categories to another without a vote of the school committee. But you can move money within those categories without a vote of the school committee. It's the same on the city side. So in the budget in my office, there's personal services, non-overtime, personal services, overtime. We can move money within one of those categories if we need it, but we can't move money from regular salaries to overtime without a vote of the city council.
That's the same for us, it has to be voted at the school committee to override something like that?
To move money from within those categories. In the school budget, because there was only a few categories, and they were so large, I suspect, I don't know, you would know better than I, but that it was probably a rare occasion, if ever, if there was a need for you to move money around at a school committee. But most certainly, to state the obvious, if there was money spent in excess of the appropriation, then that should have, the school committee should have been requested to make some sort of vote for a transfer.
I'm guessing that was never done? Nobody's, oh, we don't know yet?
Well, no, I mean, it's a matter of public record. I suspect the answer is no, but I haven't reviewed all of your minutes, so I can't answer that definitively.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for all your help.
Okay, before I go to the vice chair, can I ask you a question? You were the town manager in Bridgewater, you were the town manager in Hanover, you were the county administrator for Plymouth County, the entire county. Have you, in your experience, ever seen the capability to have multiple people doing override? To me, it sounds asinine. I don't understand how people would have that.
No, most certainly not.
Okay.
This was extraordinary.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair, please.
I know that you've gotten a lot of thanks tonight, Mr. Clarkson. I'm going to, follow up with my own thank you. But with that, I'm going to selfishly and respectfully ask for a request. When you are preparing these reports, if there is a section that goes beyond what the percentage should be for that quarter, could you please, not only is it outlined in red, but would you be able to provide, whether it's POs or line items that fall under that category so that we can see what the overspend is? So to Ms. Azak's point, you know, if it's janitorial services and we spent $200,000 on toilet paper, great, we know we're going to use it. But if it's, you know, the seasonal work, temporary and seasonal work, and we overspent on something else, I personally would like to see that, and I think the only way we're going to be able to wrap our arms around this is if we get into the weeds with it. So if it's possible for anything that is, you know, over the threshold that we've decided quarterly, if we could either receive copies of the POs that roll up to that line item, or whatever the detailed information is that rolls up to that line item, I would appreciate that.
You bet. Yeah, absolutely. So when we provide this report to you every 2 weeks, we will provide a narrative of those items that are over the prescribed amount, and then to try to provide an explanation for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, just to understand trends, that sort of thing. I mean, again, this is the first time we're looking at this budget in this type of detail, which is great, which is exactly what this committee wants. And I swear to you, the questions will get easier the more we understand what you're presenting. But I think the more we educate ourselves, we're also going to be able to educate our constituents as to how difficult it is to actually manage a budget and monies of this size. So thank you very much.
You bet.
Mr. Clarkson, could you do me a favor? Talking about Plymouth County, I served 12 years representing Brockton on the Plymouth County Advisory Board. The county offers bulk purchase, a consortium for any city, Brockton's the only city or towns in Plymouth County, to buy in bulk, and it's a cost savings. I don't think the city of Brockton, the school side, city side, has ever done that. I think we should look into that, because if we're talking about janitorial supplies, we're talking about gas, there could be a potential true cost savings. And I don't think the city, at least as long as I've been around, has ever been entertaining that. But I think we need to look at that. I also think you mentioned the solar option, and that's something that I'm going to ask for before this committee, a presentation to be done. The solar option, if you go to Brockton Hospital, you drive by there right now, you see the carports. That's a generator of revenue, significant revenue for the hospital. I was at Norton High School this weekend at a soccer game. Norton High School has this. This was presented to me when I became mayor, a company out in San Francisco. They wanted to pay $30 million upfront, $30 million. We don't pay, the city doesn't pay a dime. They construct it. Now, they get revenue off of that because they go to the grid. The city doesn't benefit from the grid, but there is a substantial revenue generator. At that time, when I presented it on the school side to the folks that are not here right now, they weren't interested because they thought, number one, it could damage the membrane of any roof on schools, and also they didn't think the parking lot here at Brockton High would be conducive. But I think we have to look at all options, city assets and school assets. So I'll work with you, Dr. Cobbs, to have a presentation done. We would put out an RFP and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not in the solar industry, I don't know, but they were talking about significant money, and other towns and cities are doing it, so I think we need to do it. I think another thing, and I've talked to Dr. Cobbs about this, and this would be a request to the members, all 7 members and myself, the bus lease over at the fairgrounds, okay, with Connie's and all that. If you think about it, when we first bought the buses, the first tranche, the phase 1, we stored them right outside here at Brockton High, right? And now we have phase 2 and we own them all. But what I think we should do is, number one, I think we should think about putting them here at Brockton High. We have the school police here, right? Chief Brenda Perez and I have already talked about this. Or if that's not conducive to the bus and to the kids, we could do a geographic distance around the city with all the middle schools. Now, Dr. Cobbs has brought to my attention that across the street at the fairgrounds is a large garage that houses the buses for repairs. As mayor, I serve as the chair of the Bat Bus Corporation, so I have a meeting on Thursday. I'm going to ask them, would they ever entertain Bat Bus garages helping us repair? Or if not, and we sever the lease and we store them on our own assets, perhaps we'd enter another lease where we could use the garage across the street. But everything needs to be on the table, so I just want to let you know that Dr. Cobbs and myself have been talking about this, and once we get some resolution, we'll come back before you to see if we can sever a lease and do a cost containment measure on that as well. Dr. Cobbs, any thoughts? Because I'm not the expert when it comes to the garage transportation.
Oh, yes, and again, the assets, when we first parked the buses over here, we had half of the fleet. So we had 60 buses. We have 120 buses now, and we just added 10. And quite honestly, Mayor, we need to probably add another 10, so we can eliminate vendors with the small vans and the out-of-district transportation costs. Other things to consider is the office space that houses the people for dispatch and the people that are over there. So we also lease space over there. Right now, we have temporary office trailers over there. So it's not just parking the buses.
No, I know. I think everything's on the table.
There's a lot of things to consider.
I
But
think we can figure that out.
so we would probably take up most of the parking lot here at the
If we
Brockton
stored them
High
all
School.
here at Brockton High School.
Right.
But
We
there's other
can
assets in
move
the
them around the
city.
city. We looked at that way back when we actually purchased the buses, the thought of putting them over
Let's
there.
just look into it. We
That's
need to at
it's
least look
another-
into it.
Another idea, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs. Mr. Rodriguez had a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. A request. Are you able to, obviously, you can do this. Can you provide every account that we have within the school district, including like the BEF, a breakdown of exactly how much we have in those accounts and what the expenditures are on that? And also, I know we're gonna, with the audit coming on board, are you able to dig up the school committee's budget prior to that, so we don't wait for an audit? Because I would like to see from FY 2020, when I first came on, to see exactly what was spent from the school committee budget, because, COVID hit, we didn't spend that money, so where did that money go?
Sure, and you raise a good point, because the information that we're providing you right now in this series of spreadsheets are general fund accounts. But as I've stated, there are several revolving funds that the schools use appropriately, grant funds, and so as I have mentioned a few times, our efforts are ongoing to improve our reporting to you, and so we are working on expanding the reporting beyond the general fund and creating a tool where we can also share with you information about those revolving funds and the grant funds, so that we can keep an eye on those as well. And we certainly can give you, because all of this information is contained in Munis, we can give you a snapshot of the last few years and what the level of spending has been.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Azak, follow-up, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I know it was when I first came on the school committee. It was Mayor Carpenter at the time, and there was a company that came and did a presentation, and because I had always been talking to Aldo about why can't we get solar panels, why can't we? So yes, we've come a long way over the years, but the company that came and did the presentation for us, the setup is very similar to how Stonehill is. It was, and I don't know if it's because our parking lot needed to be redone. I'm not sure whatever happened to that, but it was supposed to be a great idea, and then it fizzled out. So that would make so much sense, given the amount of energy, in our electric bills, and hopefully we don't have the winter that they're saying we're going to have, but we've been able to save with the heat, last year and I think the year before. So that would make so much sense to be able to get some of the solar panels to try to, and I think it would also help too with the paving, because again, I'm sure it's saved somewhere, the presentation that they had given us, but it was save on plowing, save on everything, and it would cover the cars. Again, it's the same exact setup that was at Stonehill. But that was, I'm not sure if Mr. Sullivan remembers, but that was quite a few years ago. It was right when Mayor Carpenter came on. So I think that's wonderful.
When they came to City Hall to talk to me, I took office January 6th of 2020, so it was January, February, and then the pandemic happened and everything paused. But they recently re-engaged and said, is the City of Brockton interested? And I said, I'm interested in anything that can generate revenue. So we'll grab that.
No,
It might
definitely.
even be the same company, I don't know. This one was in California. So.
Yeah, no, this one, I don't even remember the name, but it was back in, I want to say 2018 or something, 17, 18. It was quite a while ago.
Okay.
But it was a great presentation. I'm not sure why at the time. And I think they were going to repave in front of administration, but our parking lot hadn't been done at the time. And I'm not sure if that was one of the factors.
They were going to do it.
Yeah, I thought everything was all set, but again, we're looking at all the different resources. You know, solar panels have come a long way in the past few years. They're a lot smaller, a lot lighter than they were years ago. You know, so
I mean, the new public safety building on Warren Ave, we've already made the roof conducive to have solar up there. So we are going to go forward on that in terms of a revenue generator. So I think everything on the city side and the school side, we need to look at it. And then also some of the old schools that are offline. I went to the Whitman School. I love the Whitman School, right? But it's never going to be a school anymore on Manaman Street and Gifford Street. It's just sitting there. And, you know, same thing with the Shaw, same thing with the Howard. So I think we have to look at all these to see if it could generate revenue, but also increase our tax base by selling it and developing it. So,
definitely, thank
yep,
you.
thank you. Anything else for Mr. Clarkson while he's here? He's sticking around because he's going to answer some questions when we go to the some of the hires we have here. But thank you, Troy, for what you're doing. Appreciate it. The last section under the report of the superintendent, items to refer to subcommittee. Are there any matters that need to go to subcommittee?
Actually,
Can
we schedule a policy subcommittee? Because I know we've talked about implementing some new policies, and it's a little bit of a process. By the time we get them, then they're reviewed by the attorneys or even Mask. But I know that there's a handful that we've, especially since this whole shortfall came about, we've talked about implementing some policies. So if we can get going on that, so if we could do a policy subcommittee, not policy manual.
Yep. We'll work on that, make sure that Melinda can help us. Cynthia Rivas-Mendez, please.
Yeah, an accounts review subcommittee and a DREI subcommittee. I was wondering if on the 24th, I don't think we have a meeting scheduled for that day.
No, we don't. We have the 17th. We don't think we have the 24th.
Yeah, so can we do it on the 24th?
6 o'clock?
For 6 p.m., yeah.
Thank you. Any other members relative to items to send to Mr. Rodriguez, please?
I'd like to schedule a music, arts, and extracurricular activity sub. I could reach out to the members to see if we can piggyback on the 24th, or actually work with Mr. Homer on the facility side.
Perfect. Any other matters relative to subcommittee? Mr. Homer, please.
Yes, I did put forward a date for the facilities subcommittee. I will speak with the members too, just to see if the agenda items are ready to go before we publish that, and we'll make sure we get that published on school side and on city side.
Excellent, thank you. Any other matters before us for subcommittee? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you again, Dr. Cobbs. Agenda 4 is the consent agenda, A, B, C, D, and E. Are there any members that would like to take them individually, collectively? What is the will of the committee? Mr. Rodriguez, please.
I would like to pull D, section 6A only.
D, 6A, which is FY 2024 Community Empowerment Investment Grant in the amount of $434,000
Yes.
a year for 3 years, or 1.302 in total. So $1,302,000 in total. So there's a Ms. Rodriguez has made a motion to take that. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Ms. Azek made a second. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. That passes, so we can take that out. What's the will relative to the other matters? What's the will of the committee?
Motion to accept items A, B, C, D, 6B, D, 6C, and E.
Motion was made by Mr. Homer. Is there a second? Is there a second by Mr. Sullivan? Before we take the vote, let me just read those into the record, please. A is the approval of September 14th, 2023 special school committee meeting minutes. B, approval of September 6th, 2023 regular school committee meeting minutes. C is the approval of June 27th, 2023 facilities usage and planning subcommittee meeting minutes. D, 6B is FY 2024 English Learner Education Support Grant in the amount of $139,229. And then FY 2024 Strengthening Family School Partnerships in the amount of $20,000 even. And then E is the acceptance of human resources notifications, appointments of certified personnel, appointments of non-certified personnel, actions, leaves of absences, resignations, retirements, We have a motion on the floor. Before I take a vote on that, I just wanted to, again, ask Mr. Clarkson and Acting Superintendent, relative to the appointments certified and non-certified, with the dollar amounts that are stated, we're comfortable with all those? Thank you.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Clarkson, you concur with that? Okay, good. All right, so there's a motion on the floor, probably second. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. That passes. Now we'll go to Mr. Rodriguez again, which was the FY 2024 Community Empowerment Investment Grant, $434,000 even, a year for 3 years, or $1,302,000 in total. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This grant right here, it's specifically for the re-engagement center. I know myself and colleague Cynthia, we were there a few weeks ago doing a visit. This is new to the district. Is Dr. LeBois, is he? Do you mind giving an overview of the re-engagement center so the community knows what the re-engagement entails? Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. The Re-Engagement Center is a new initiative out of the Unified Student Services Office designed to really combine four groups of people that were working sort of in isolation, that through my first year last year, we really saw the benefit of what we could do collectively to support students wanting to re-engage in school. What we experienced last year was a number of students who, through our re-engagement team, and consisting of an adjustment counselor and an attendance officer, were struggling to go from having dropped out or not engaged in school to returning to a full-day experience with the expectation of 6 blocks of classes and academic expectations all day long. We also looked at the work that was happening with our attendance office, our re-engagement team, our Pathways program, which was a non-traditional pathway to a diploma for students working who might be having full-time jobs, and differentiated from Edison Day as sort of a brick and mortar school, but more of a programmatic individual approach that allows students to earn credit at their pace while keeping an eye on the prize, right, relative to that diploma, and getting to a point of being self-fulfilling as a member of the community. We also recognized that students who were being removed from school for long-term disciplinary periods, we were not effectively providing them an education which is required under Massachusetts general law. And so last year, a new program really was piloted, which looked at a Center for Restorative Justice, where students could have an opportunity to return to a program to work on the harm that was caused through that behavior, own their behavior, and make amends to the community. So again, trying to take a more restorative approach versus the continual removal of students from school. So those four things were happening somewhat in isolation, right? And the idea was if we could merge the work that's happening in attendance, re-engagement, restorative justice, and pathways, what a wonderful opportunity to allow our students individual support as they work to re-engage in a traditional brick and mortar program. So it's designed to be a place for students to arrive. They are greeted by a staff member. They will work with the student on an individual intake, identifying goals and post-secondary experiences that they would like to eventually work toward, and then putting them on individual pathways toward that post-secondary success. For some students, it's working into a trade. So we have a student now who just joined the Re-Engagement Center working on about 3 credits. So he can hopefully transfer over to Brockton High and engage in some CTE programming to sort of really eventually end up in a trade where he can feel engaged and a sort of positive member of the community. What was happening last year, just to sort of give some context, is because the only option we really had were either traditional brick and mortar programs, right, or schools like Edison Evening, champion Brockton High, we had a lot of students who were trying to re-engage but had nowhere to go, right? The only options we had were those traditional programs. So again, the re-engagement center becomes that place where the re-engagement team can say to a student, drop by the center Tuesday at 10 a.m. if you'd like. Somebody will meet you there. We will meet you where you are. We'll get you working on an individual plan, and we'll work with you on flexibility of scheduling academic support. Our students who are also sort of removed from school for disciplinary issues also then can access the academic supports, right, that exist within that re-engagement center to allow them to sort of continue their academic progress while they're not in school, and working again toward that restorative approach to return as a full member of the community, having made appropriate amends for their behavior. So the re-engagement center truly is a idea, right, that we feel like when we sort of thought critically about what we could do differently in the student support space for students, it was having this re-engagement center, having some place appropriately staffed to support students, meeting them where they are, and then gradually rebuilding them up to being able to hopefully re-enroll in a traditional school, or work with our tutor and support staff there to earn their diploma through the attainment of credits through the re-engagement center. And it's specifically designed to engage students who have traditionally been disengaged from traditional programs, whether that's because of attendance, work-life balance, home issues or trauma in the home. It's staffed by not only attendance officers, restorative justice mentors, we have educators, we have counselors, we have mental health counselors, school adjustment counselors, all there to ensure that whatever the individual experience the students might be having that's keeping them from accessing a diploma, we're there to support them and guide them toward that attainment.
One of my questions is, it's listed that, it's going to provide trauma recovery activities, including therapeutic art and music programs. Who is actually doing this work? When you say therapeutic art, do we have a teacher that's licensed as teaching art? Do we have a music teacher that's actually teaching music? Or are we just hiring mentors that's going to come in and we're doing music?
So the idea would actually license art therapy is a discipline that people can be trained in relative to social and emotional support. Right now, none of those positions exist, right? So the goal of the grant would be to fund, as a seed program, these sort of mixed modality therapies as a way to re-engage kids in a different way. So right now, that's not happening. With this grant, the idea would be to sort of pivot into a more robust program using all available resources that we know research tells us, right, evidence tells us works for students who have experienced trauma.
How did we come about these salaries? Like, how did you base that off to, adjustment counselor at $80,000, justice, restorative justice coordinator, $80,000? How did we get to those numbers?
So for the certified staff, I believe, and I don't have the contract with me, I think we budgeted like a master's 5 as a placeholder. For the restorative justice coordinator, that $80,000 salary is in line with other non-union supervisor roles in the district. So working with, at the time, with the CFO and the finance office to identify the right sort of place to place that salary. What we did was we looked at comparable roles and what they were earning who are non-BEA. So the BEA positions were, I believe, budgeted at Master's 5. The non-BEAs looked at similar titles and what existing contracts had established as the salary.
So the coordinator is basically on a one-on-one contract?
Correct.
I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but
Vice Chair, please.
Sorry about that, man.
No. You can run it if you want, man.
Just a quick question. What are the credentials required to be a restorative justice coordinator? I'm just curious.
There's formalized training. Our formal partner is with Suffolk University's Center for Restorative Justice, who offers a series of certification courses and training. So we expect to see full certification through Suffolk University, an endorsement from them that this person is a sort of practitioner, as well as lived experience working with youth who are working to sort of on that restorative part of the discipline.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Homer, please.
So just earlier, you mentioned sort of, as an example, I think you gave us the idea of like setting up an appointment for a student who could come by and drop in. Is that, I know that's, you're giving us just an example off the top of your head.
Sure.
There, but is that the nature of the program would be arranging an appointment to set up a time with the student to prepare like a full schedule of when they would utilize the space at 440 Belmont Street, or is it more of just coordinating efforts through 440 Belmont Street and the students are accessing their learning in a different location? Can you just clarify just a little bit about like what that?
I don't know that I understood the question.
Sorry. So the restorative justice, the center, when you're talking about engaging with the students, I was just thinking in terms of like the location. Where is that happening? And we talked about
So
how-
that is
yeah.
at 440 Belmont. The Center for Restorative Justice, the office spaces and the group meeting spaces and the classroom spaces are all at 440 Belmont. Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions at this time? There is a motion. It was properly second. We have to take a formal vote on this. Mr. Rodriguez, please.
I'd like to put a motion to table this item. I would like to take a deeper dive.
Table or postpone?
Postponement, sorry.
Postpone,
Postpone
okay.
this initiative. I would like to take a deeper dive. I would like to get an actual chart sheet of who the administrators are, who the educators are, who these mentors, with the actual breakdown of the salaries, because this body, nothing personal, it's that, where we are, I know this is a grant, but when it comes to salaries, this is the body that approves what the salaries are supposed to be, the whole district, even on one-on-one contracts, but, obviously, we're gonna get to that point where certain one-on-one contracts is not gonna get approved unless this body approves them, so I would like to, motion to postpone this.
Form of a motion. Is a motion made? Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Second. Motion to postpone to a date certain? Do you have a date certain on when you want to postpone it, or to just a later school committee meeting?
Later school committee meeting.
Okay. So motion on the floor is properly second. It was made by Ms. Rodriguez, properly seconded by Ms. Azak to postpone this agenda matter. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sullivan, I'm sorry, thank you.
Hi, Dr. Lablo. Thank you
Hi,
for the
Ms. Sullivan, nice to
presentation.
see you.
I was just wondering, is there a time limit on the grant, though, that we have to approve something before?
I would have to go back and research. I'm sure there is a due date, Mrs. Sullivan. I just, off the top of my head, don't know what it is. I know it was from the Massachusetts Office of Economic Development. I can go back and certainly get back expeditiously relative to that deadline. I just don't know it off the top of my head.
Just so we don't miss out on
Agreed,
grant
sure.
money. Yeah. Thank you.
So motion on the floor to postpone this to a later school committee meeting. We will get a status update from Doctor relative to the time frame, so we don't miss that drop dead date deadline. But it was properly seconded by Ms. Azak, made by Ms. Rodriguez. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. It does pass, and it will be postponed to a future school committee meeting. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
That concludes the consent agenda, which is agenda 4. Now we go on to agenda 5. Unfinished business. I know tonight we're having, and we thank her for being here, Tracy Novick is here. Presentation from MASC, which is Massachusetts Association of School Committees on Social Media. Ms. Novick, thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me. think the presentation's coming up behind you. I hope you all can see it. So this is a reworked presentation. As many of you are aware, the committee members are aware, my name is Tracy Novick. I'm a field director with MASC. My area is Central Massachusetts, but I also manage both school finance and social media for the association. And we thought that it would be good in discussing with a couple of you for you to have a bit of refresher in terms of how your responsibilities as public officials, as elected officials, in a time where a lot is going on, and also, I realize, also an election year, that this is a good chance to just sort of ground your work in your work also for the community in terms of your use of social media. And let me just say, with deference to your protocols and processes, if you do have questions, I'm happy to take them either as we go or at the end. So the main thing that I always really want to stress with school committees, and also generally speaking with the public, is that you all know that you operate under a significant number of laws in Massachusetts, and honestly at the federal level as well, as elected members of this public body. And the thing to recall constantly is that those laws don't change and those laws don't go away simply because interactions happen to move online. Now, we had a bit of an illustration of this when everyone was meeting on Zoom, but it is important to remember that all of those laws under which you function, most notably certainly the open meeting law, but certainly the state ethics laws, and then also the laws that govern school committees in Massachusetts, all continue to be in play when you are interacting with each other, with members of the administration, and with members of the public when you're doing it through social media. And I just thought I would flag a couple of other things that also, of course, you know that you have responsibilities under. You have responsibilities under laws that cover employment, particularly as the public body that is the employer of record, both for collective bargaining and also contracts that you hold with individuals, as you were just mentioning. You also do have responsibilities, and of course the administration has responsibilities about the laws that are covering students, everything from FERPA through particular kinds of laws that are under state law and even local regulation. And then there are laws that cover district operations in terms of what parts of things are your job versus what parts of things are the superintendent's jobs, the divisions of responsibilities between the school district and the municipal sides. Those are all in play as well, okay? So much in the way that I know that all of you, both here at your meetings and also then out and about, have to keep those things in mind when you pick up your phone, when you open your laptop, however it is that you choose to interact with social media. You still need to have all of those things to the fore when you're actually having those interactions through social media. So with that in mind, in terms of the open meeting law, I always like to highlight for committees that there's sort of a short list of things that make you subject to the open meeting law. But the first thing to remember is that the open meeting law in Massachusetts, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, was created and is ongoingly designed and enforced to ensure that decisions that are for the public interest are made in public and made in a way to protect the public interest. Now, in order to be subject to the open meeting law, a couple things have to be in play. First of all, there has to be deliberation. Deliberation is any discussion that is moving towards a decision, excuse me. You don't actually have to make the decision at that particular meeting, that space, that conversation, but anything that's actually moving in that direction is considered a deliberation. Only public bodies in Massachusetts are subject to the open meeting law, so the school committee, any of its subcommittees, and this is the part that particularly gets tricky, any quorum of any of those bodies is itself considered a public body. Remember, it doesn't take the full body of the school committee to make a school committee meeting. You just need a simple majority. Same thing is true of subcommittees. As I'm sure the committee is aware, there also are committees that are that can be appointed by the committee for them to be advised on particular issues. If it is something that's under the committee's purview, those are also public bodies. Posted meetings. You've had a couple of references tonight to agendas. Posted meetings have to be in Massachusetts posted at least 48 business hours in advance. They have to include the date, the time, the place, and anything that the chair, per the AG, reasonably anticipates discussing. And then purview. And this is one, certainly, you've had some conversations this evening about budget. There's a couple of things that are very much under school committee purview in Massachusetts. And really the question of, can a public body get together to discuss something? The question of purview really comes into play. Sometimes I have heard committees get advised that they can't all go see the high school football game. They couldn't all be together at that sort of event. I would never dare suggest such a thing in the city of Brockton. But that's actually not the case, okay? As long as you don't all then go to the football game and get together afterward and decide that you're going to cut a budget line, make a decision that's under your purview in some other context. So it's really that question of purview. Are you discussing something that is actually up to you to decide legally? Public has to have access to public meetings. Again, we have provided for this in different ways, particularly during the pandemic. Your meeting here this evening is part of that, but that is certainly part of that. We'll talk about an exception to that in a minute. And then a quorum, for the purposes of you all, a quorum is a simple majority of the public body, okay? So keeping all of those things in mind, all of those sort of pieces of what makes up the public body, what makes up the open meeting law, what makes up what you're subject to, then take that and apply it to places like Facebook, okay? I have yet to run into a town or city that does not have a Facebook group on which, and sometimes you have more than one, and sometimes they're by neighborhood. But if you think about those things and you then apply it to, say, the municipal Facebook group, okay? So first of all, think about purview. Someone, a member of the public, posts a question about the district budget on wherever it is that people go in the city of Brockton to discuss these things. Okay, well, we've already established purview, right? The district budget is absolutely under the purview of the school committee. Next thing that happens, somebody tags in some group of the school committee, okay, a quorum. And I'm not even going to ask you whether or not this has happened, because I am sure that it has happened, because it happens everywhere. What just happened? Well, you just got a quorum established, right? You just got a quorum established on something that's under your purview. My hope, as someone who works for the association, is that this is going to immediately set off alarm bells in your mind. Okay, this is going to, however you want to put it, it's going to set your spidey senses tingling. It's going to make you think twice. It's going to make you ask with concern. Now, I'm intentionally saying this to you, but I also am to some degree addressing the public over your head. Let me say this. I get it. I understand why you're going to do this. You've got elected officials. You've got something that's of concern. You want to know what they think. But when the next thing happens and you don't get an answer, this is why. Because the place where they can talk about that is here, in a properly posted public meeting, where everybody knew at least 48 business hours in advance, where there's been provision made for public access, and where everybody is going in knowing that that's the topic of conversation, much as you did this evening. You had a posted agenda. Everybody knew that the budget was on the agenda. They could have a deliberation. They could talk about what they were doing moving forward. So when that school committee member, this is going to be now going to be a hypothetical situation, because what we're going to do is create an open meeting law violation. When a member of the school committee replies with an opinion, well, I think moving forward, we need to do this. When another member likes that comment, you've just got two members who've deliberated, okay? The minute, say, another member comments and somebody else likes that comment, you're already starting to establish a decision, okay? So that's why this can't happen, because this was not a discussion that anyone knew was going to happen at all, let alone 48 business hours in advance. There wasn't a posting at City Hall. There wasn't a posting on the municipal website. All of the places that people go to know that those things are happening, that are required under state law, didn't happen. There wasn't a properly posted agenda. These matters weren't shared before the discussion. There wasn't any place where anyone could go to say, the chair reasonably expects that these are going to be conversations that are going to happen at this place that's publicly accessible. And as much as the quip for most of us is that just about everybody's on Facebook one way or the other, it really isn't actually a public forum. And so not everyone in the city of Brockton's on Facebook, as much as I'm sure sometimes it feels like they are, and not everyone in the city of Brockton is in that group. And that means that not everybody actually has access to that discussion. And that's a violation of the open meeting law as well, okay? So it's when you take those elements together and you apply them to any of these conversations. Now, I use Facebook because I think that Facebook tends to be the place where this happens, and also the danger of an elected official liking someone's comment, I think, can sometimes be missed. But if you're liking their comment, one assumes you're agreeing with them. And if you're agreeing with a colleague and you're agreeing about something under your purview, you're starting to move towards deliberation about something that may be under your purview. But that also, by the way, could be true of you liking someone's comment about something else. Can you actually do this on Instagram? Sure. Can you do this on Twitter? Absolutely. Could you probably find a way to do it on TikTok? I would imagine you probably can. Haven't seen quite as much of that happening with public officials just yet, but we'll give the next generation time. Just the thing to remember is always these pieces, though, coming together, okay? Now, that is not to say that you should all, turn off your phones, get yourselves off of social media and so forth. I do think that there is a very, very good use of social media that elected officials have been using, can be using. I think that there's a lot of reasons to be on there. I also, by the way, think that there's a lot of reasons for school districts to be on there. Somebody should be telling your story, and it should be you. But what are some things that you should be doing and can be doing that are useful to the public, that also keep you well out of the danger of potentially violating the open meeting law? Well, the first thing you can do is, for example, you had a presentation this evening on a budget. When somebody asks a question, you can link to the presentation. You can link to the presentation tonight. You can link to presentations you've had before. Whether that's the documentation, whether it's the video of the meeting, wherever it is that that information appears, that's absolutely something that you can and should share, okay? There are plenty of elected officials that, just as a matter of course, when an agenda goes up, they share that the agenda is up. And that way, yes, is that required under Chapter 30A? No, but have you done another step forward in making sure that your constituents actually know when the meeting is and what's on the agenda? Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good thing. But it's not uncommon for a question to be posed where the answer has actually already been given in a public forum where you can actually simply link to the place where the information was given. That's a good practice. Everybody has the same information then. It's information that was already available. Something you can do also, somebody raises a concern in one of those places. When is someone going to talk about this? Or I would really appreciate it if we could get some questions answered about this other thing. If the answer is, we're going to talk about that at the next school committee meeting, there's going to be a public forum on that issue at this particular date and time. The best place for parents to get involved is this upcoming meeting, okay? That's a thing to invite people to. Where is it happening? When is it happening? How do people get there? Sharing that information about the places where people can both learn information and can weigh in as members of the public, that's also a good use of social media. Don't need to say this, I think, to elected officials, but I do think that it is an important use of social media. You can also always acknowledge the validity of people's concerns. or the validity of people's emotions behind their concerns. And I think that I do think that that is an important thing to do as someone who, as those who are in elected office. I think that, noting that you may even share their emotions, totally fine. Don't overlook that as a use of social media, because a lot of times, as I think most of us know, what's actually bringing people to wherever it is that they're expressing whatever it is that they're expressing is, anger, hurt, disappointment, concern. We hope sometimes that it's joy, happiness, encouragement, what have you. But those are places to share that too. Connecting members of the public to those who can best address their concerns. Now, I put this here. I will say that this is one of the things where with new school committee members, a lot of times they're kind of surprised to learn that this falls to them as part of their job, right? Who do you go to ask this particular question? Where do you go in order to get this issue resolved? You probably are already doing this anyway. It's probably some of the emails you get, it's some of the phone calls you get. But sometimes, as you may know, something that's getting raised on social media is something where really you just need to call so-and-so, or you just need to send an email to so-and-so. Who is it that can actually address the concern? Is that someone that you can actually connect them with? And then finally, and I know that this is one of the probably least joyful parts of the job, it is okay to remind people that as an elected official, you have particular rules under which you function, and thus there are particular things that you can and cannot do. We can't share that information because of X, Y, Z. We're going to have that conversation in this meeting here, and I really can't say more. The particular tricky one, by the way, is when people are asking for a commitment to a particular position ahead of time, and you're going to be deliberating that at a meeting. And as I'm sure most of you know, decisions are made around the table. They're not made ahead of time. So saying that you're going to be, bringing what you know to the table to make the decision there, that can be a hard one, but it is an important one. Now, I am doing something that I wouldn't usually do during this presentation, and I'm showing you a video. We have a collection of videos in the office that actually were brought to us by our colleagues in Texas. I want to start by pointing out that the section of this video, which is intentionally humorous, so please go with that, is not actually anything to do with any executive session that you are facing. And that's intentional, because I don't want to give you an example that might be close to anything that's at home. But this is, I think, a really good illustration of why executive sessions exist. Because I think that in terms of things that are not always well understood by the public, and sometimes really not well understood necessarily even by public bodies, the idea that executive sessions themselves exist to protect the public interest, and that deliberation outside of the public eye can be in the public interest, can be not just difficult to grasp, but can feel contrary. And I think this is a decent illustration of this. So I'm going to introduce you to Andy. Can we play the video?
Andy, I'm glad I ran into you.
Hey.
Want to know what's going on with the school board? Has the entire board gone nuts?
I'd be surprised if we have. Why would you say that, or is that just your way of supporting your local school board?
You know very well what I'm talking about. How can the school board stand by and let Hank Fisher be suspended without giving him a reason why? Everybody knows he keeps the high school students in line, no drugs, no alcohol. We won't find another principal like him.
Hey, nobody hates this more than I do. And the entire board sees it the same way.
Well, if that's the case, then let's put him back on his job and move on. The community's in an uproar. Nobody knows what's going on, or even why Hank's been suspended. Not even Hank.
Oh, Hank knows why he was suspended.
He said he didn't. How do you know he does?
Because we discussed it in closed executive session.
Oh. Oh, so why was he suspended?
We're not supposed to talk about it outside of a closed session, okay? But there is a good reason for his suspension.
Well, I can't see any reason to let a man like Hank go.
He was accused of sexual harassment by 3 teachers. Hey, don't tell anybody you heard that from me.
You know I won't tell anyone.
Right, yeah, and then it ends up on Facebook is the next answer. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to guess that a number of you, first of all, caught the main point, right, which is that it was actually the member of the school board who violated the executive session and then was trying to get somebody else to commit to not actually violate the secrecy of executive session. Yes. Does anyone know, and do any members of the committee know offhand, what are the possible legal ramifications of what Andy as a member of the school committee just did? You can just call it out. What isn't? What isn't? Yes. Yes, it's an HR nightmare, right. So essentially, remember, in this circumstance like this, the school board, the school committee, is essentially the legal entity of the school district, okay? And we have employees charging another employee with sexual harassment. The cases of those employees, by the way, have now been compromised, right? The legal position of the school district has very much been compromised. And so those are all things where he shouldn't have had that conversation outside of executive session. Now, we can get into the question of whether or not that would have necessarily been an executive session in Massachusetts. The laws covering which employees would be under this vary from state to state. But those conversations that happen in executive session are happening in executive session in order to protect the interest of the school district. And I know that can be a really sort of tough row to hoe depending on what you're talking about. The easy one that I usually give as an example, one of the reasons that you can have an executive session, is for possible disposal of property or possible purchase of property. Why do we do that in executive session? Because the minute the school committee meets here on television and says, hey, we're thinking of buying that property over there and we're setting a budgetary limit of X, you've just completely lost your negotiating position, okay? Same thing with collective bargaining, but also there's other reasons why you may need executive session when you're talking about personnel, when you're talking about other things of that nature, okay? So I raise that here because I know that sometimes some of the answers that some of you may need to give to members of your constituencies are, we can't have that conversation in public. Andy wasn't wrong when he said, we've talked about an executive session because that information is posted. He was wrong, and some of you caught it, when he looked over his shoulder and said, we're not supposed to talk about it, but, okay? That was when he was wrong. You can tell people that a topic is covered in executive session. You can't go farther than that. And if you need a sort of quick look at what exactly you can say, your postings cover what can be shared publicly. We're talking about this. It will give all the information that you legally can actually share. So, couple of things in sum, okay? First, the main thing that I want to stress this evening is that the laws that under which you operate don't change just because you happen to be on Facebook or someplace else online. I don't want, though, you to take away from this that I'm telling you to get off of social media, okay? I just want you to bring that framework to bear. It can't be a replacement for the deliberation that happens by a public body in public. That cannot be a thing that happens. So those who are members of the public body should proceed with care. Do remember, more than anything else, don't create a quorum of the public body online. Now, how committees handle this can vary. In some cases, they've chosen to make sure that there just simply isn't a quorum in a board or in a group. That can be very difficult to achieve. Sometimes people will sort of tag themselves out. Sometimes they've decided that somebody is the right person to actually jump in and share what information is available. That's up to you all. But whatever you do, don't create a quorum and don't start deliberating. Do, though, remember the things that are in the public interest. If you've had a presentation, if you have an upcoming meeting, if there's a place where people can either get information, share public comment, those are good things to know. And again, for really everyone to know, the thing to remember is that the work of the school district is done at public meetings in public, and that's done so that the work is done in the public interest. And that is what I have for you this evening, although, of course, I'm certainly open to any questions you may have. And I think I'll wait for you to come back up, Mr. Mayor.
That was exceptional, Ms. Novick. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'll start with Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. That was what we needed. So I had reached out to Tracy because a lot of people have been tagging us on Facebook and other social platforms, and they're not understanding why we're not replying. For many of us that have done the charting the course, we try to do it at least once a year, some of us, but you cover this, and this will explain why we can't answer them. Many of us do post different things that are coming on, events or informational, anything that comes from our Brockton Public Schools, I like to share. But thank you for touching base on that, because a lot of people think we're ignoring it, and we're not. We just cannot deliberate. And this right here pretty much, explains why we can't do certain things. I know we fall under certain guidelines. I'm not sure about our city council, but I know school committee, we do follow mask. We are part of the association. And the other thing is I know you offer training on the open meeting law. So, I know that's something we have been discussing. So, maybe if we can look into that a little. Because if they offer the training, whether we can do it on Zoom as a committee or in person, but rather than try to go to the AG's office or something, but we need to utilize the services that Mask offers our committee. So, and thank you. And a lot of us are going to be seeing you in November at the conference. And again, that's another informational few days where we do learn so much. So the more we learn, the better we can serve, and the better we can, give back to our community as far as bringing that information back to Brockton. So thank you so much for the presentation. I know you tweaked it a little for us.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Any other members of the committee have any comments or questions at this time? On behalf of the committee, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And you already do have the presentation, so this will be another thing you can link to if you need to.
Thank you. Under unfinished business, we did, and Attorney Spotterfoot is here. She can give us some conversation, but we did want to have further discussion on the audit discussion advisory committee selection. Attorney Spotterfoot, thanks for being here.
Sure. So when we last met, we decided to put forward the application for the audit selection advisory committee. The committee originally asked for a 10-day posting window. Unfortunately, due to some absences in the school department, we weren't able to get the application up until this past week ago, Tuesday, so it was up for about 8 days. We did put on the application that we would be closing it tonight. We had 31 people who applied to be part of the advisory committee. We're prepared to move forward with selecting them tonight, but I did want to note to the committee that it was a shorter posting window than you all had requested. So we certainly could postpone if that's something the committee would like to do, but I do believe the school department also had a pop-up on their website to make sure that people saw where the application was. We posted it both for ability to apply online as well as paper copies were at the front desk. So unless there's an objection, we could proceed with selection if that's...
What is the will of the committee at this time? Vice Chair?
I don't know if we need a motion, but motion to approve moving forward to select we're going to select 8, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So there was going to be, out of those 8, 2 were going to be alternates, correct? Okay.
For...
So I think the charge was going to be 3 permanent members, 1 alternate, and the thought would be to select 8 tonight, so that way, we'll select them in order.
Yep.
But that way, if people are no longer interested or unable to serve, we have a few backups. So we may not get to all 8. We may fill our slots with the first 3, 4, 5. 4 or 5, but I figured out of an abundance of caution to keep this moving forward, we would select 8 tonight, and then call them in the order they're selected.
That sounds good.
Any other questions? We do have a motion on the floor to move forward on this tonight, made by the vice chair. Is there a second on that motion? Oh, sure, I'm sorry. Yep, Mr. Homer, please, I'm sorry.
Just looking at the chart of the applications that we received already, did we get any applications that needed to be translated? Anybody here who filled it out who didn't do this in English and had the process translated, and that's what we're receiving tonight?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know the form itself auto-translates, so it may be that that did happen, but it's not indicated to me on that form whether or not that happened. But the form, I understand, has the ability for members of the community to toggle between the major languages in Brockton. So it could be that that is the result of it being auto-translated. It's a Google Translate function.
Any other questions, Mr. Homer? No, I'm sorry. Oh, any other questions of the committee at this time? We do have a motion made by the vice chair to move forward tonight. Is there a second on that motion? So motion was made by vice chair. It was probably seconded by Mr. Sullivan, so we would move forward tonight. All in favor of that motion, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. It does carry. We can move forward tonight, and I know we have a process in place to do that as well. Thanks to Mr. Rodriguez' suggestion, so.
If I could just outline, so on the application itself, we just asked people to identify whether or not they were related to a member of the Brockton schools or an elected official, and then whether they donated. We didn't necessarily note on the application that that was disqualifying. So I think as we call up the people, and Jess Hodges assisted by double checking in the OFCPF, sorry, the online database, which tracks political donations. So she verified, she checked every name, even if the person did not note whether or not they had donated, to make sure that we were sure that they did or didn't donate. So my thought is that once we pick a number, we have a wheel that we'll put up on the screen. There's been numbers assigned to each of the people who've applied. Once a number is drawn, I can read the entry of that person into the record, allow for any discussion, and if the committee decides to disqualify based on one of those reasons, we can do that as we go rather than, or do we want to create kind of a blanket, remove those numbers? I think it might be easier just to keep all the numbers in, pull, and then go from there.
I think there's only one person that even came up. with
It's more than one person who've donated. Yeah, 3. There's 3. There's one we couldn't find an entry in the database, so it may have been a mistake, and we can call that person to ask. They self-disclosed, but we couldn't find an entry for a donation. And there's one person who's actually an employee of the Brockton Public Schools who applied. And truthfully, we didn't note that you couldn't be an employee on the application, but that's something we can take up if that individual is selected. So unless there's an objection, could we put the wheel on the screen and then we can start? Okay, so what we've done here is numbers 1 through 31 to correspond with the entries you have on the spreadsheet. So we'll spin to get our first selection.
Just a quick question again. So the first 3 we're doing would be for permanent. Would the 4th be the alternate, and then the next 3 would be permanent backups, and then what's the process?
I guess we could either, I guess the way I was envisioning it is we would kind of work through to fill seat 1 until we could find somebody, work through to fill seat 2, work through to fill seat 3, if that works for everybody. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Okay, so our first selection is row 19. This is Brenda Deanne. I won't read her address. We also did note on the application that if people are selected, we will ask them for proof of residency, similar to the documentation that we request of people enrolling in the public schools. She provided an address in Brockton. She did note, this is the person I was alluding to earlier that said they are not related to anyone who we noted, but did donate. But when we checked the online database, it did not reflect any current donations. It may be she donated to someone a while ago, but we can call and check and see if who she was referring to. For her statement, she wrote, "I am retired and previously was on many parent committees for both self-help and Head Start. I was included as a parent in the hiring process for the director of Head Start, as well as teachers and staff signing off on the budget as a parent had to be included for federal funding." So I think at this time, unless there are any objections, we can move forward and I guess asking the will of the committee if she has donated to anyone who is a current, I think our status was current school committee elected official or city council member, is the will of the committee that that person not be selected if they have donated to somebody.
If we can't verify that she has or has, I mean, I feel like if we can't verify in our own system to see that she did donate, I don't feel like she should be taken out of, that's just I don't know how anybody else feels, but if we can't if she put this yes on there, but we don't have any data to prove that she did, I kind of feel like she's number one, she should be left in.
Okay, and I plan to ask, well, it doesn't have to be me. I think we can decide after who makes the phone calls. But if when she's called, she does disclose that she did, would the committee want to disqualify her if she does disclose, even though we're not able to find necessarily the backup? And this would go for anybody, is that these disqualifying from your perspective?
Isn't that the purpose of us choosing 8, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I guess I'm asking, would we want to move on to the next person if she does say that she donated, even though it's not reflected in when I call and confirm it, if she confirms that she did donate? Is that disqualifying from the perspective of the committee? Would we move on to the next person?
I believe so, because those are the rules that we made in the very beginning, is that they couldn't be related to anybody that's on the committee, and they also couldn't be related to anybody that works in the school system. We changed that specifically when we were putting together the application. I'm just saying those are the rules that we made, but if anybody disagrees, let me know.
We do want to look at, so OCPF, Office of Campaign Finance, now handles all elected officials in the city of Brockton, but that wasn't always the case. They changed the parameters based upon how many people lived in the city of Brockton. So when I first got elected in 2005, all we had to do is we had to file it with the elections office at City Hall. So we probably would want to, OCPF of course, but we also would want to check with the office at City Hall. I can't remember when that was changed, but it was quite a long time ago, but, and that makes me really old, but I will tell you that originally OCPF did not track elected officials in the city of Brockton, so we should just check with, Cindy Hogan is the elections commissioner.
Got it. And I guess I should ask too, before we move on to the next person, does anyone have any reason to disqualify this individual for the reasons we haven't discussed? Okay, so we'll move forward with our first selection. Can we just spin the wheel again? All right, number one. Number one on the sheet is Sarah Shaw, provides an address in Brockton, has been found on OCPF to have made multiple contributions to current elected officials. Noted on her application, she's contributed to the campaign for the mayor. I can go on and read her statement, but I'm guessing from what was just discussed, we would just move on to the next person?
Correct.
Okay. Please spin again. Okay, entry 26.
There is no 26.
Oh my, there is no 26. Oh, that's funny. Huh, I wonder how that happened. Well, we can just spin again.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like,
It's weird.
you're a great Vanna, Sarah.
Well, I know. 19 again. Oh, actually, if you click remove, I think it'll take that off the wheel. There we go. So we're not here all night spinning. All right, 16. 16 is Sean Cleary. Gave an address in Brockton, said no to both of the questions. Statement, I'm interested to find out what went wrong and what the plan to fix it. Any reason to disqualify this individual?
Nope.
All right, number 16. Spin again. Thank you. All right, number 29 is Rochelle Etienne. Address in Brockton given, no to both of the questions. Statement given, I would like to serve on the committee for 2 reasons. It says or 2 reasons. I live in the community and have children who have gone or are currently attending Brockton Public Schools. I have a vested interest in understanding or being aware of how funds were spent, aiding to choose an auditing firm that will help dissect the budget and so we can make better financial decisions on our children's educational needs is very important to me. I would love to participate in the process. Thanks in advance for taking the time to review my application. Any reason to disqualify this individual?
No.
All right, please spin again. All right, number 6. Sorry. Lawrence Larry Curtis, an address is given. So he responded no, I think correctly to both, but it was noted that he's contributed to a member of the state delegation. We did say to any current Brockton elected officials, so I don't know, that might be something we want to discuss. His statement is, I'm a retired organizational behavior management professional that has previously performed project work for BPS systems related to Independence Academy and recently with health services on the district COVID-19 testing in school and at-home testing programs. I can bring an overall understanding of organizational behavior decisions and identify both strengths and weaknesses in decisions being made that impact our students, teaching professionals, administrative leadership, and community overall. I would be a neutral voice for both BPS and the community as a whole in identifying how and why this audit is important to all involved moving forward.
He was a BPS employee last year.
He was an employee, not a contractor?
Employee.
Okay, so then, no. Would the committee move forward disqualifying with this individual because he was an employee last year?
For me in the operations department.
Okay. All right, so no to 6. Please spin again. $21. Elizabeth Pyers, excuse me, address given in Brockton, no on the questions, comment given. I would like to be a part of this to make sure for myself that everything is being done to make sure there is complete transparency in the process. Any reason to disqualify this individual? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to the next. All right, entry 30. This is Hope Walsh, an address given in Brockton. This is another person who is currently an employee of the Brockton Public Schools. So I'm guessing for the reasons that we disqualified Mr. Curtis, we would similarly disqualify Ms. Walsh.
Yes.
Okay. Please spin again. Thank you. Okay, entry 14. That is Elizabeth Kelleher, address given in Brockton. She answered yes to both questions. And we noted here that her background was clear, so it may have been, she may have checked yes in error on both. She does, okay. Her sister's a teacher, okay. Would you want me to confirm that with her, that it was a mistake, or should we just move forward with a disqualification? She did say yes to both. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure it's the right Elizabeth. Yeah, that's my only concern if there's two people. Okay. So then we'll move forward with disqualifying her. Please spin again. Okay, number 3. That is Miriam Baraji. Address given in Brockton, answered no to both questions, answer given to why she would like to serve. I am interested in serving the community and especially the interests of our community's children. As a parent of 4 BPS students at the Edgar B. Davis, it is my priority to ensure that my children in a school system that is equipped to provide our children with the best possible resources for their development and success. Transparency is essential in assuring the financial success of any school department. I am interested in representing the interest of the BPS students and the Brockton community as an alumni, parent, and resident. Any reason to disqualify this individual?
No.
Great, hearing none, we can move on to the next slot where it's filling slot number 6 now. Okay, entry 10. Paulina Fernandez Cardoso, given an address in Brockton, answered no to both questions and stated, I need to know where my tax dollars are going and to hold the ones that manage them accountable for it. We need to do better for our children, and as a parent, child enrolled with a Brockton public school, I need to seek the best outcome for her. Any reason to disqualify this individual?
No.
Great. 2 more slots to fill. Spin again, please. All right, spot 23, Violet Ako. Given an address in Brockton, noted no to both questions and to comment as to why to contribute to my community and assist in building our public schools. Any reason to disqualify this individual? Great.
No.
All right, 1 last slot to fill. All right, slot 7. Amani Thomas, address given in Brockton, answered no to both questions and wrote, moving to Brockton changed my life. I was able to purchase a house at an affordable price. My children are excelling at the Brockton public school system. In Boston, for speech therapists didn't meet with my children and the school covered for them. Any reason to disqualify this individual?
Nope.
Okay, so we have our list of 8 people. With regard to process, as I discussed before, someone would reach out to them, confirm that they are still interested, review to them what they are signing up for, what we put on the application, and then ask for their proof of residency. I think we'll just try to go person by person to confirm proof of residency as we fill those slots. I'm happy to do that. I'm a little hesitant as an attorney to reach out to people. That sometimes makes people nervous when they get a phone call from an attorney. So I don't know if perhaps we could ask Jess maybe to assist with that, if everyone's comfortable, unless a member of the committee wanted to make that call themselves. I think it'd be fine coming from the school department. Okay. Hearing no objection to that, we'll move forward with that, and then once we have the final list, we can start to circulate some dates for the first advisory committee meeting, so we can put together the application for the audit firms. Thank you.
We, on behalf of the entire committee, we want to thank everybody that took the time to apply, those that were selected, those that's number didn't get picked, and those that unfortunately were disqualified. But that's a lot of people showing some interest. I know those Scrivener errors, so it wasn't really 31, it was 29, but that's a lot of people. So thank you very much, everybody, on behalf of the committee. Thank you, Attorney Spotiford. We'll move on. Agenda item 6 is new business. Is there any new business before us tonight? Any new business? Mr. Homer?
Yes, thank you. I was going to just make a point, just as we had heard from Dr. Elvio Ferreira about Chapter 74 programs and pathways and things in terms of educational programming, I think it would be good for us to maybe entertain a visit from possibly either our director of music or the leadership team, just to talk about changes to the music education program and explore, how we come to those changes, which we know will have an impact. I know we heard a lot from the community about that, but I do think it's important to just note that, just in the same way that we plan for learning a foreign language or learning another language, you're learning to read music and perform and communicate with an instrument. It does start early. The sooner you start that, the farther you'll go with that. I think changes to the music program should be considered the same way that we would consider changes to academic programming that we've already entertained as a body before. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Homer. Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you. Mine is more of last night's invitation to the city council to address our deficit. I'll start off to say that it was an embarrassing night. I personally think that there were some city councilors that were they wanted to, strut their walk, pull out their chest. They don't have a chest. I'll start off with Mr. Farwell. I will be calling some members out. One of his questions is, how do we operate as a school committee? That was kind of an embarrassing question for a city councilor that was former mayor and sat on this committee for 10 years to ask, how does a school committee operate when you sat in this chair? Very embarrassing. He also stated that the the city council, always approved whatever the school committee budget was proposed to the city council. I would just like to say, rest assured that moving forward, while I'm here, if any other members are still here, that the budget that will be presented will have the proper staffing level without reduction in force. So the city council, be ready, because there's going to be a lot of asks. He also asked, how can this happen? It happened because for years and decades, that former school committee members didn't do their jobs, didn't hold the school district accountable. They didn't have safeguards in place, because if they put those safeguards in place, we wouldn't be dealing with this, because it was already laid out for us. There would be a blueprint. That never happened. He also questioned FY 2024 spending. He actually pulled out the budget. He also outlined specific items, line items. It's kind of odd to at that moment to pull out line items that when we presented the budget, so that means that Mr. Fowle, as a city councilor, didn't actually read our budget. As a city councilor, you're supposed to approve our budget. So he's equally responsible for this because the school committee, we approved it, and you gave the stamp of approval, Mr. Fowle, with the city council. What was the word? Ridiculous or whatever he said, audit. Mr. Fowle and the school and the rest of the city council need to know that this is a school committee audit, not a city council audit. It's our authority. So yes, we have an advisory board with members of the community to show the transparency. That's what it's about, showing transparency. He also stated we dropped the ball, that the school committee dropped the ball. Mr. Fowle and the city council dropped the ball bigger than us. Again, the city council approved our budget. So now you want to go pick-point line items that you were supposed to review before you approved our budget. And here is Mr. Fowle, I hope you're watching, sat on this board for 10 years, was a mayor for a term or two, you're on the city council. What safeguards did you put into place? Mr. Mark DiAgostino was the vice chair for 2 years. He asked, how could this happen? Where was the checks and balances? Mark, I don't recall you asking for where the checks and balances were when you sat on this board. He also failed to mention that he was the vice chair. He also mentioned that he chaired the accounts review on the city council side. But he also failed to mention that he also chaired the accounts review on the school committee side. He also mentioned, why don't we televise it? Mr. Mark DiAgostino, how come you didn't televise it when you were sitting on this committee? Why didn't you move the process forward? Why is it now that we're dealing with the deficit that you want to call out all these changes that the school committee should be doing when you sat in this seat but never moved it forward? Mr. Manicello, long-term member of the school committee, vice chair for 10 years, had to state that he received monthly reports from finance. I've been on this committee for 4 years, and the only time I've seen that was during our budget process. And if any member here, and I know we have some long-term members, did you ever receive financial reports on a monthly basis when you were on this committee? And you served longer than Mr. DiAgostino. So he clearly, this was a grandstand by the city council. I would like to call him the 11 Dwarfs, but Councilor Rodriguez wasn't there because that's what it was. It was a Disney show. And that's what they try to pull. Pointing fingers, trying to show that they're the boss. But what they fail to realize is that the school committee, we're the governing body. We didn't have to even show up there. We didn't even have to answer a question. The only people that we're responsible to answer to is the constituents. The city council didn't put us there. I had some words with Mr. Manicello after the fact. I'm going to end this with Mr. Lally. And the reason why I'm going to end this with Mr. Lally is every other councilor have already asked what they wanted. He made a comment about what was so funny. There isn't nothing funny. I think you're a joke and you're a laughingstock. You still live at home with your mother and your parents. Let me just put that with your parents. I don't even think you buy your own socks. And for you to sit where you are to make a decision on voting on the budget is very childish. And I know you're young in age. You need to reassess how you address this body. That includes everybody on that city council. And to say that there is infighting with this board, there isn't infighting. There's disagreements. I don't dislike anybody here. We all disagree, and the city council disagrees as well. But for those members that sat on the school committee and now on the other aisle, reassess the actions that you took, that you didn't take on this board. Don't point the fingers, because you guys are equally responsible because you guys didn't do your job when you were sitting on this board. Thank you.
Are there any other new business, any other members have any new business at this time? Seeing none, that part of the agenda is closed. I do need to read the following, which is agenda item 7, executive session. First, I need to entertain a motion to go into executive session. Is there a motion?
Motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Sullivan made a motion. Is there a second? Ms. Azak made the second. Before I take the vote, and it will be a roll call vote, I just have to read the matters into the record. Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21(3), to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, BEA and BESPA. Next matter, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21(1), to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. Open meeting law complaint. And finally, the third is Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21(7), to comply with or act under the authority of any general or specific law or federal grant and aid requirements. Open meeting law, general law, Chapter 38, Section 22FG, for the purpose of reviewing, approving, and/or releasing executive session minutes. Those are the three matters, executive session. We have a motion. It was properly seconded. We'll do a roll call vote, please. And once we go into executive session, we will not be coming back into open session. We will read the roll. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Homer?
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivas-Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Ms. Azak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Chair says yes. We are going into executive session. Thank you.
Wait, we have to.